Chapter 2082. After all, he still had to stay in this world for a while, and he couldn't stay at home for a long time, so he had to go out for a walk. This guy is still not cooperating at all. Coterie Five Rivers frowned, and her delicate little face was particularly ugly. Commander, it's useless even if Dustless cooperates. Murasame Rain took a sip of coffee and looked at Dustless and explained. Even if Dustless can increase the favorability of the elves, it's useless. If it's Shido, it's fine. As for Dustless, it's a pity. I've investigated his body countless times. He doesn't have Shido's ability to seal the elves. That's true. Hearing this, Itsuka Kotori calmed down and muttered to herself. Seems like I still need to rely on Shido. The dialogue between Murasame Rain and Itsuka Koto was very subtle and weak. Others could only see the lips biting, but Wu-chan was clear about it, and he even heard it all without missing a word. I don't have the ability? What a joke. Wu-chan smiled but didn't say anything. He closed his eyes and laughed in his heart. It's undeniable that I don't have the magical ability to seal energy like Itsuka Shido, but I have the system. Thinking of this, Wu-chan grinned. So many years had passed, and he hadn't used the system during this period. The reason was that his strength had reached such a level that the presence of the system was almost negligible. In most cases, the function of the system was limited to transmigration. Dustless's system's ability was also very simple. In the system, he could train at will. As long as he killed the opponent, he could obtain all of the opponent's abilities. Otherwise, if he couldn't defeat the opponent, he would die. That kid Shido. He looked up and glanced at the picture frame on the wall. The brother and sister in the picture were Itsuka Kotori and Itsuka Shido. It's too easy to kill you. Dustless shook his head. Although Shido Itsuka was quite capable, his combat prowess was nothing to be proud of. If Dustless Itsuka killed him in the system, he would be able to obtain all of his abilities, such as the special ability to seal spirits. Of course, the Ido Shido in the system had nothing to do with the Ido Shido in this world. The Ido Shido was created by the system consciousness, Ling Air. Even if it was killed, it had nothing to do with the Ido Shido in this world. There's nothing in this world that I can't get. Lazily sitting on the sofa, Dustless immersed himself in the system world and began to practice Ido Shido. Time passed quickly, and in the blink of an eye, half an hour had passed. During this time, Dustless had also completed his training. He had successfully killed Shido Itoka in the system and obtained his unique ability to seal the power of spirits. The reason why it was so fast was because Shido's strength was too weak. He was weak in the real world, and he was also weak in the system world and the real world. He was easily killed by Dustless. Therefore, Dustless also obtained Shido's ability to seal spirits. Strange. At the moment when she went out, Murasame Rain frowned, and the dark circles on both sides of her eyes disappeared. Her eyes were full of wisdom and strangeness that had never been seen before. What's wrong, Rain? Itsuka Kotori looked over and saw the strange look on her face. She smiled and joked. Don't tell me you've detected elven psychic waves from Dustless? For a long time, Dustless was thought to be an elf, but strangely, no psychic wave was detected. Therefore, whether Dustless was a human or an elf had always been a mystery. That's not it. Murasame Rain shook her head and said strangely. Ratatosker Base just sent a message. It seems that they detected the same physical data from Dustless as Shido. Gotcha. After she said that, Itsuka Kotori's eyes widened, and even the lollipop in her mouth was bitten into pieces. You mean, how is this possible? Why didn't they detect it before? Could it be that this kid was hiding? Forget it, it doesn't matter. Now that Dustless has the same physical data as Shido, that means... Itsuka Kotori's heart suddenly skipped a beat, and she immediately looked at Murasame Rain in disbelief. She already understood what it meant. You are right, Commander. Murasame Rain's back was also struggling, her head was dizzy, and she said inconceivably, I'm afraid that Wu-chan has experienced some unknown transformation, and also has the ability to seal the power of elves like Shido. In the end, Murasame Rain's mind was also in a mess. She was responsible for collecting Dustless's data every day. Half an hour ago, Dustless didn't have this ability. Who would have thought that after only half an hour, This guy had such an amazing change. He inexplicably had the ability to seal spirits. This was too much. Don't be surprised, this is nothing. Don't say it's just a trick of Itsuka Shido. Turning his head and staring at the two dumbfounded people, Dustless disdainfully curled his lips, full of ridicule, and proudly said in his heart, "As long as I want, I can also have the so-called elf's ability in an instant." No matter who it was, as long as he practiced in the system and killed the opponent, Dustless would get all the abilities of the opponent. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2083. Dustless was so invincible. Any ability of the enemy, as long as he wanted, could be obtained instantly. But the premise was that he must defeat the enemy in the system until he killed the enemy. Only then could he obtain the enemy's ability. In this case, Itsuka Kotori's gem eyes were shining. She glanced at Murasame Rain and asked eagerly, "How much is the favorability of 10 fragrances for Wuchen?" Favorability toward Dustless? Murasame Rain lowered her head and pondered for a moment, and finally said, "About 70%. At the beginning, Toka's favorability toward Dustless was close to 0, and even reached a negative level. But then Murasame Rain's voice was full of helplessness, and she smiled bitterly. The temptation of food is always invincible. Toka followed Dustless for a few days and ate a few days of delicious food, so her favorability toward him also skyrocketed. Is that so? I can only say that Dustless is lucky." Itsuka Kotori also sighed, and then she waved her hand and said, "It seems that we don't need to do anything. Dustless is enough to take care of Toka." Seems like it. On the other side, Dustless and Toka were walking together. "Look, Dustless, I want to eat that bread. Is this a hot dog? Give me 10 servings. I want to eat dessert." On the bustling street, there were all kinds of dazzling food on both sides. The fragrance was overflowing. Even if Wuchen had no appetite, he would feel hungry when he smelled the tempting fragrance, not to mention the big foodie Night Sword God 10 fragrance. Fortunately, Itsuka Kotori gave Dustless a lot of yen before they went out, so he didn't have to worry about money. "This tastes really good." On the bench in the park, Dustless and Toka sat together, both of them holding ice cream in their hands. And Toka was holding a plastic bag full of food. "Yes, not bad, really not bad. I want to come out and play again next time." Yi Saber God Juxiang was overjoyed. Her delicate little face revealed a happy smile. She was very happy. Seriously. Dustless didn't know whether to laugh or cry after seeing this scene. As the saying goes, contentment brings joy. Just some food was enough to make the Dark Saber God so happy that he couldn't tell north from south. That, an extremely unfamiliar voice suddenly sounded from behind. It was soft and gentle, making people unable to help but want to protect her. "You are." Dustless subconsciously turned around to look, and his eyes were a little dazed. A cute face popped out from the dense grass. Her skin was as white as snow and her long blue hair gave people the impression that she was very beautiful. Her bright eyes were dotted with tears. Her pitiful appearance and timid tone made people want to protect her. "Is this the 4 bonsai?" Dustless muttered to himself in astonishment. His eyes widened. He did not expect to encounter Yoshino here. But what's with this outfit? Dustless frowned as he looked at the 4 bonsai. The girl's entire body was black, and her little face was also black. Even her clothes had traces of burn. Could it be that she was being hunted down? Dustless secretly guessed. The 4 bonsai was not good at fighting, and she had never dealt a heavy blow to the AST members who attacked her. The word kindness was written on her porcelain doll face. Could it be that she's hungry? Seeing the girl staring at the ice cream in his hand, Dustless's expression was rather strange. He immediately snatched the snack from Yi Saber God Juxiang's arms and handed it to the 4 bonsai. Hey, Dustless, that's mine. A foodie was indeed a foodie. Yi Saber God Juxiang immediately stomped his feet when the food was snatched away. The spiritual waves around his body also began to go berserk. He stared at Dustless as if he had killed his father. "I'll buy 10 times the amount later and return it to you." Dustless glanced at Yi Saber God Juxiang indifferently, and then slowly walked towards the 4 bonsai. Are you for real? The anger on his face immediately disappeared, and Yi Saber God Juxiang's face was filled with joy. His impression of Dustless skyrocketed. That's a bit too much. Itsuka Kotori and the others who were secretly observing the situation were speechless. They didn't know whether to laugh or cry when they found out that Dustless's impression of Yi Saber God had dropped from 70% to 20% after he snatched her snacks. However, after Dustless promised to buy 10 times the amount of snacks for Juxiang, her impression of Yi Saber God Juxiang shot up like a rocket. Not only did it exceed 70%, it even reached 80%. This foodie is so easy to win over. Itsuka Kotori sighed. She had a complicated expression on her face. It wasn't clear whether she thought that Dustless was lucky, or that Yi Saber God Juxiang was too stupid. Excuse me, are these all for me? Looking at the snacks handed over by Wu Chen, Siwon looked at Wu Chen submissively. Her tone was very low. Eat as much as you want. Dustless smiled and nodded. He stroked the girl's hair and asked, You're an elf, right? How did you end up in such a sorry state? You know that I'm an elf. 4 bonsai's food suddenly stopped in front of her mouth. She looked at Dustless hesitantly. She was even a little cautious. After all, humans hated elves. It was normal for 4 bonsai to be cautious. Don't be afraid. Dustless waved his hand and pointed at Juxiang. She's called Yi Saber God Juxiang. She's an elf just like you. I'm different from the other ASTs. I'm your friend. Are you telling the truth? The girl's tone was still light, but it was obvious that her impression of Dustless had improved. He had to admit that children were easy to fool. Of course it's true. 10 fragrances is an example. Glancing at Nightblade God 10 fragrances, Wu Chen signaled her to release her power. Hum hum hum. Even though Juxiang was unhappy, she still nodded and released a powerful wave of energy. It was the psychic wave that only elves could release. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 reviews plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2084. Is she really an elf? Their timid eyes stared straight at the Nightblade God Toxiang. Perhaps because they were of the same species and could understand each other. The 4 elements felt a sense of belonging to the Nightblade God Toxiang. Nightblade God 10 Fragrance's eyes also glowed with a sense of belonging to the same kind, a feeling of mutual appreciation. Looking at Dustless's eyes, Janssen gritted his teeth and said, Can you help me find a white doll? Doll? Wu Chen frowned. Only then did he remember that there was a doll in the 4 elements called the 4 Kainai. You lost it when AST was chasing you? Nightsword God Toka asked angrily. Those bastards just won't go away. They are nothing compared to Kotori. Of course they are. Wu Chen was non-committal about this. Then he added, but those 2 organizations aren't good people. Are you saying that Kotori is not a good person? Toka was stunned and looked at Dustless in surprise. No. Dustless shook his head and said softly, I'm saying that the organizations behind them are not good people. No matter what kind of group they are, as long as they are related to organizations, there is no such thing as a clean organization. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. At the same time, a sharp sound came from the sky. Mysterious falling objects covered in flames were whizzing toward them. There were so many of them that it was dazzling. That is. Dustless's eyes opened slightly, and the mysterious objects a few hundred meters away suddenly became very clear. Are those missiles? Those AST members are really boring. Dustless sighed, then he frowned and said, No wonder they have to seal the power of the elves, otherwise the psychic waves emitted from their bodies would be really troublesome. Not sealing the power of the elves means that they will emit psychic waves at any time, which can be easily detected by AST. Disappear. Dustless's eyes flashed with a black luster, his pupils focused on the large number of missiles, then he blinked slightly. Amaterasu. In an instant, the oncoming missiles were engulfed by the black demonic flames. The sky was filled with black flames, and the missiles formed a black wall of flames in the direction they were heading. Boom boom boom. After a while, the void exploded, and the sky was filled with flames. The black smoke was more than 10 meters high, and a large cluster of flames connected together. It was quite a spectacular sight. Thank you. Janssen stood up and bowed to Dustless very seriously. Perhaps because of her young age, Janssen was quite timid in everything she did, and her shining eyes contained some fear. Don't be so polite. Wu Chen smiled and rubbed Sinai's hair. He comforted her gently. Anyway, AST will arrest my servant even if you don't exist. Your servant? Si Yunai looked at Nightblade God 10 Incense with a strange look. He already knew who he was talking about. Hey, who's your servant? I'm not. Hearing this, Toka immediately looked at Dustless with dissatisfaction, and said seriously, I'm not your servant, I'm just temporarily staying in your house, no, Coteries' house temporarily. Toka was very unwilling to resist. Dustless said that she was his servant in front of Janssen, and she felt embarrassed, so of course she had to refute this guy. At this time, Janssen tugged at Dustless's sleeve and said softly, I want to be your servant too. Can you help me find Janssen? Seriously, this guy's luck is too good. Itsuka Kotori, who was secretly observing, was speechless. She was shocked to find that just because Dustless had destroyed the missile attack and helped the 4 elementals, her favorability towards Dustless had skyrocketed. Janssen's heart is weak, and she's just a child, so it's easy for her to rely on others. Rain Murasame was quite clear, and it was normal for her to have a favorable impression of someone who saved her. It was easy for a child to rely on others, especially a helpless child. What's the favorability of this elf team Chin now? Kotori asked curiously as she twitched the lollipop in her mouth. Around 60%. Rain Murasame nodded, and then said seriously, if Dustless can really help her find her lost doll, her favorability would at least reach 80%, or even 90%. Really? Kotori was stunned, and then she waved her hand and said, we seem to be superfluous to Dustless. He doesn't seem to be good at dating, but he can always inadvertently win the favorability of the other party. Some things are just so magical. Rain Murasame also said with emotion, and it could only be said that it was fate. Damn it, why is that kid still haunting us? Last time when we carried out the mission to kill the princess, we also encountered this unlucky guy. As expected, the AST members who were rushing over noticed Dustless. Their expressions changed drastically, especially Daybreak Prairie Fire and Kite One Origami. Their delicate faces froze one after another. Captain, do we still need to continue the mission? Toby Origami asked with a rare lack of confidence. This? Liaozi's mouth twitched a few times, and then she said helplessly, the mission ends here. When we go back, we will say that the enemy escaped. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2085. The enemy ran away? The members of AST rolled their eyes when they heard this. The enemy was so close, yet she claimed that Dustless and the others ran away. Wasn't she lying through her teeth? However, even so, the other members of AST remained silent. It was obvious that they agreed with Blazing Sun's approach. Very well. When we return, report according to what I said. You guys discuss it and don't say anything wrong. Blazing Sun heaved a sigh of relief. She felt that the mountain hanging on her back had disappeared without a trace. It was not that Blazing Sun was afraid of Dustless, but the difference in strength between the two sides was too great. It was as simple as a cat toying with a mouse. The last time they captured the princess, Night Sword God Toka, they were played by Dustless. But he's really strange. Toichi Origami stared at Dustless. Her pupils dilated slightly. Where did this guy come from? I've never detected psychic waves, but the density of the two elves beside him is extremely high. This, Blazing Sun's expression was also very strange. She could not help but mutter, no psychic waves? Could it be that we were wrong from the beginning? Is he a human? But, since when were humans so powerful? Since when were humans able to roam the sky without the help of external forces? Since when were weak humans able to defeat the fully equipped AST? It was reasonable to say that Dustless was not an elf. By the way, I have a new mission to assign. Blazing Sun's eyes flashed. Blazing Sun's gaze swept across the members of AST one by one. Seeing the cowering eyes of her team members, she could not help but sigh in disappointment. It's difficult to achieve great things. Blazing Sun looked up at the sky and sighed. Blazing Sun's gaze turned to Toichi Origami, who had a calm expression. She then said with satisfaction, "Origami, that kid, you'll be in charge of monitoring him from now on." Me. When Yue Origami heard this, her fair face showed a rare emotional fluctuation. She pouted her sandalwood lips. Thinking of Wuchen's character, she had a sad feeling that she wanted to cry but had no tears. Itsuka Kotori's home. Even though Kotori had expected some progress in the relationship between Dustless and Dustless, she didn't expect Dustless to bring her back. You didn't even ask for my permission to bring her back? Do you really think of Wuhi's family as your own? Itsuka Kotori always had a lollipop in her mouth. With her arms akimbo, she stared at Dustless, who was sleeping on the sofa. This guy was really too arrogant. He brought a person back and didn't even greet him, the owner. It was simply outrageous. This entire planet is mine. Wuchen stretched and casually said. Not to mention your family. Wait until you can defeat me one day, then you can come and fight against me. The strong will only use their fists to talk, and the weak will only talk arrogantly. What an unreasonable guy. Itsuka Kotori's jade-like finger trembled as she pointed at the shameless Wu Chun. She could only stare helplessly. Looking at that annoying face, she couldn't wait to slap it. Itsuka Kotori opened her mouth and was about to mock Dustless, but then she heard a calm voice. Sealing the power of the power, so that she can only feel shyness and other emotions? Why are you suddenly asking this? Itsuka Kotori looked at Dustless strangely and said seriously, only Shido had this ability before, but now, Itsuka Kotori was also confused. When she checked Dustless's body, only he could seal the power of spirits. But strangely, when she checked Dustless's body, she got the same data as Itsuka Shido. In other words, Dustless could seal the power of spirits like Itsuka Shido. It's better to seal their power. Dustless looked at Toka and Yoshino and said impatiently, it's not a good thing to be too eye-catching, you know what I mean, right? Itsuka Kotori nodded. If he didn't seal their power, it would attract a bunch of cockroaches. But it's too embarrassing. Dustless's expression changed and his tone became strange. Let's just go with the flow. There were some things he wasn't good at, and he was already a few hundred years old. Time had already worn away his inner desires, so he didn't want to take the initiative to flirt with girls. Dong dong dong. At this moment, there was a dull knock on the door. Itsuka Shido is back? Dustless frowned and looked unhappy. I'll go take a look. Itsuka Kotori went to open the door in her slippers, but the person she saw made her frown. Toka Origami. Looking at the person in front of her, Itsuka Kotori was depressed and thought, is this guy going to fight me? We're neighbors from now on, I'm just here to say hi. The girl's face was expressionless as if she was talking about something normal. In fact, Toka Origami had been peeking at Dustless. Itsuka Kotori wasn't her target. Itsuka Kotori felt like she was being ignored. Toka Origami was talking to her, but she kept peeking at Dustless. Speaking of which, how did you become our neighbor? Itsuka Kotori raised her eyebrows as she recalled the main point of the story. You guys sure put in a lot of effort to keep an eye on me. Dustless sighed, but he didn't mind. AST was a government agency, and it was easy for them to buy the house near Itsuka Kotori's house. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus more chapters, 3,000 rewards plus more chapters, 1,000 comments plus more chapters, 500 automatic subscriptions plus more chapters. Chapter 2086. How boring. Dustless shook his head. He laughed at AST's actions. In reality, he was just living the life of an ordinary person. He did not do anything out of the ordinary. Spying on them was pointless. If one day Dustless was annoyed, he could just kill them. It was like sending a lamb to a tiger's den. Let's get along peacefully in the future. Yuichi Origami left a sentence, then turned around and left, quite at ease. Live in peace with you around? Itsuka Kotori snorted disapprovingly, treating Tabichi Origami's words as a joke. She then muttered to herself, with AST around, can this world be peaceful? The organizations behind you are all the same. Dustless looked at Itsuka Kotori and continued to drink his tea. There was no such thing as a clean organization. Bang! Itsuka Kotori slammed the door in annoyance. Those locusts from AST just won't go away. About what you said yesterday, I've changed my mind. Itsuka Kotori was stunned when she heard Dustless's cold voice. She looked at him blankly. She did not know what this guy was trying to do. About what happened yesterday? Itsuka Kotori frowned. She lowered her head and thought about what they talked about yesterday. Her eyes lit up and she said in surprise, "You're really going to go to school in Toka?" Itsuka Kotori had always wanted Toka to join the school. She hoped that she would be able to integrate into human society and learn about human culture, so that everyone could live in peace. Unfortunately, Dustless did not agree, so the matter was left unsettled. Until now, when Dustless suddenly spoke, Itsuka Kotori was surprised. I'm not as stubborn as you think. Wu Chen looked at Itsuka Kotori seriously, and a strange light flashed in his eyes. Then he stated his condition. However, I have to join that school. You want to be a student too? Itsuka Kotori's face froze. She looked at Dustless suspiciously. She felt that this guy was up to something. No, forget about being a student. I'd rather be a teacher. Dustless shook his head. Forget about being a student. He was already a few hundred years old. It would be ridiculous for him to be a student. No one was qualified to teach him. The reason why Dustless chose to become a teacher was actually because he had his own goals. Since he had promised to help the four elements find the lost four kunai, he would definitely complete it. At that time, the four kunai were being hunted down by AST, and they were lost in the process. It was likely that the four kunai was in the hands of AST members. Since Kaichi Origami and Dustless were in the same school, it was natural for Dustless to contact her. 3 days later, in the morning, Dustless easily got a job as a physical education teacher. As for other subjects, Dustless was not suitable for it, nor was he interested in it. The atmosphere of the school is really annoying. Entering the school again, Dustless didn't have any emotions. The only thing left was disgust. A centuries-old figure stepping into the school again was a really unpleasant feeling. Look, who is that? He seems to be walking towards the physical education teacher's office. Could it be the new physical education teacher? This time, the principal finally has a conscience. He finally found a handsome physical education teacher. The group of students stared at Dustless in astonishment. Some of them even showed an expression of infatuation, and there were quite a few of them. Dustless felt helpless. He couldn't help but sigh. Sometimes being handsome was a sin. Hey, you're the new physical education teacher, right? At this moment, a rather light voice suddenly sounded. It was very pleasant to the ears, as pleasant as the sound of nature. The seductive voice made people want to hurry up and strike up a conversation, as if it was filled with magic. Who is it? Curious, Dustless looked back. He had heard too many pleasant voices. The only thing that surprised him was that this pleasant voice sounded familiar. It's you. A graceful figure appeared in front of his eyes. An unexpected figure appeared in front of him. Dustless's pupils suddenly shrunk slightly, and a strong sense of disbelief flashed through his eyes. Isn't this Tokisaki Kurumi? Why is she in this school now? According to the development of the original work, it should be some time later. Dustless's face was full of puzzlement, and his brain power was somewhat overdrawn. It seems that my arrival has caused a butterfly effect. Some things have changed, Dustless muttered, and at the same time he glanced at the smiling girl. Her appearance was peerless, her temperament was bewitching, and her eyes were like spring water. Her every move exuded charm, and between her frown and smile, one's thoughts seemed to be controlled by her, and one could not help but follow her thoughts. What a living seductress! Dustless sighed in his heart. Even though he had a calm mind for many years, he could not help but be aroused. To be able to make a centuries-old monster like Dustless feel desire, it was enough to show how charming Tokisaki Kurumi was. Phew. After taking a deep breath, Dustless's heart calmed down, and his eyes regained some clarity. Then, under Dustless's puzzled gaze, Tokisaki Kurumi slightly bowed to him politely. I'm also a new transfer student. Teacher, please take care of me. My name is Tokisaki Kurumi, and I'm an elf. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Oh. Chapter 2087. The only thing that surprised Dustless was that Tokisaki Kurumi actually took the initiative to approach him. Dustless didn't think that he was her target. This guy seems to want to fuse with Itsuka Shido. Staring at the smiling girl, Dustless frowned slightly. Her smile was like a spring breeze, making people want to open their hearts to her and confide in her. Not to mention being wary of her, it was a feeling of wanting to bow down to her. Tokisaki Kurumi's eyes narrowed into crescents. Her smile was sincere and polite. If Dustless wasn't a transmigrator, he might have been fooled by Tokisaki Kurumi. The girl's bright and gentle smile made it hard for people to doubt her. That's right. I'm your new physical education teacher. What can I do for you? Dustless's tone was indifferent. There was even a hint of rejection and disgust. As the saying goes, a weasel pays a visit to a chicken with bad intentions. Tokisaki Kurumi was exactly like that. She took the initiative to talk to Dustless for no good reason. Dustless couldn't even be polite to someone who had designs on him. What's with this guy's attitude? That's right. Don't tell me he's putting on an act for others? He's too pretentious. The surrounding students saw this scene and felt injustice for Tokisaki Kurumi. From their point of view, for such a cute girl to take the initiative to talk to Dustless, this guy's ancestors must have burned incense and prayed to the Bodhisattva for protection. The heavens must have given Dustless face. But now, his indifferent attitude made everyone jealous. This guy is too insensible. Isn't he just a little handsome? Why is he putting on airs? The surrounding students looked at Dustless unhappily and couldn't help but curse him. This guy actually dared to treat a gentle beauty like Tokisaki Kurumi coldly. He really deserved a beating. This bunch of idiots. Dustless was speechless when he saw everyone looking at him like he was an idiot. It would be fine if Tokisaki Kurumi was here to strike up a conversation, but it was clear that she had ill intentions. She was about to swallow him alive. Yet he was still smiling at her so foolishly. Wasn't that an idiot? This guy. Tokisaki Kurumi was also in a daze. To be honest, she was very confident in her appearance. When she took the initiative to talk to others, they would usually be overjoyed. Only Dustless was an exception. Staring at Dustless, Tokisaki Kurumi's interest was piqued. Sensei, may I know your name? Tokisaki Kurumi bowed slightly and maintained her gentle smile. Dustless glanced at her, nodded and said, My name is Dustless. I'll be the physical education teacher of this school from now on. If there's nothing else, I'll leave first. Ouch! At this moment, Tokisaki Kurumi's face suddenly changed. Her rosy face instantly turned as white as snow. She looked extremely weak, as if she was sick. You're not feeling well? Dustless frowned and reminded her in a serious tone. If you're not feeling well, you should rest at home. Dustless sneered in his heart. Isn't this a little too fast? You were fine before and now you're sick? Sorry, I've been anemic since I was young. Sometimes I feel dizzy. Tokisaki Kurumi revealed an apologetic look and shyly looked at Dustless. Sensei, why don't you help me to the infirmary? Infirmary? Wu-Chun frowned slightly. Soon after, he glanced at the weak young lady in an extremely bored manner. Subsequently, he left in a carefree manner under everyone's stunned gazes. Sorry, I don't have time, and I don't know where the infirmary is. Please find someone else. After saying that, Dustless's figure gradually disappeared into the crowd, leaving behind a dumbfounded Tokisaki Kurumi. This guy is called Dustless, huh? Interesting. This is the first time I've seen someone who isn't interested in me. Tokisaki Kurumi licked her lips as a strange light flashed in her eyes. Prey that liked to struggle was actually the most interesting. Those who meekly submitted to adversity were, on the other hand, boring. Other than Itsuka Shido, I didn't expect there to be another interesting guy. I think he's the PE teacher in my class. Tokisaki Kurumi softly muttered as she looked at Dustless's back. Her gem-like eyes blossomed with beautiful colors. Despite being rejected by Dustless, Tokisaki Kurumi's delicate face didn't show the slightest bit of disappointment. Instead, she was grinning from ear to ear as if she had found a fun toy and skipped away. In fact, it was just as Dustless thought. Tokisaki Kurumi came to this school for Itsuka Shido. She dreamed of becoming one with him. What a boring woman. Although you're pretty, you think too highly of yourself. Dustless looked back at the girl's figure. Despite being separated by a sea of people, Tokisaki Kurumi's figure was clearly exposed. Dustless couldn't help but shake his head. Dustless has seen many beautiful women. Although Tokisaki Kurumi was like a poison that made people want to put their hands in front of their mouths, hundreds of years of experience had already obliterated some of the primitive ambitions in Dustless's heart. He only had one impression of Tokisaki Kurumi. She was very ordinary. Moreover, in Dustless's opinion, Tokisaki Kurumi was an unmistakable jinx. Whoever she looked for would be unlucky, as if they were possessed by bad luck. Dustless wasn't talking nonsense. She would only target people that she was interested in, and those that Tokisaki Kurumi was interested in had all turned into corpses. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2088. In fact, Tokisaki Kurumi didn't take the initiative to talk to Dustless. She had her own intentions. Before this, Tokisaki Kurumi had inquired about Itsuka Shido. Unfortunately, for some unknown reason, Itsuka Shido was kicked out of his home. As for the reason, the instigator was none other than Wu Chen. Tokisaki Kurumi had always been puzzled about the reason. Until today she was still puzzled. Itsuka Shido was such an important person, yet he was kicked out of his home. She was curious about the reason behind it. I will see through your conspiracy sooner or later. Tokisaki Kurumi no longer hesitated and walked toward the school building. The farce came to an end. On the other side. Thank you, Mr. Principal. Take care, I won't see you out. In the empty school building, Dustless sent the principal off with a smile. He then turned around and stared at the beautiful girl with dark circles under her eyes. Pardon me for asking, but does it have anything to do with you that I may PE teacher? I say, aren't you guys overstepping your boundaries? Dustless looked at the silver-haired girl and asked curiously. Taking a closer look, this person's appearance was rather perfect, and her figure was not bad either. Her breasts were curvaceous, and her delicate white skin was tinged with red. Her pink lips were as fragrant as the fragrance of roses, making people unable to resist the urge to go up and take a bite. However, the only flaw was the dark circles under her eyes, which seriously affected her beauty. Rain, you can go back. There's nothing for you to do here. Also tell Itsuka Kotori to mind her own business. Dustless waved his hand and impatiently ordered her to leave. He then said, the 4 elemental plushie might be in Tokichi Origami and AST. I'll leave after I get it. However, Murasame Rain just smiled and didn't care. From now on, I'll be your assistant. Please give me your guidance. Little Chun. No, Dustless, Mr. Dustless. Let's get along peacefully in the future. Murasame Rain looked at Dustless's eyes, and finally quickly changed her words. If she called Dustless Little Chun, she didn't know why, she always felt very strange. Even though Dustless looked young and immature, the vicissitudes of life in his eyes and his carefree attitude towards everything did not seem like something a youth should possess. Assistant. Dustless rolled his eyes and said snappily, do whatever you want. I've already asked you to go back. Don't complain to me if anything happens in the future. Then Wu Chen sat at his desk and flipped through today's class schedule. Coincidentally, he found that the next PE class was Itoka Shido's class. You're giving me a pillow when I'm sleepy. Maybe I can resign and go home after a day as a PE teacher. Dustless stretched out, and a few playful arcs appeared on his face. It's good to tease young people occasionally. Looking at the playground outside the window, Dustless said to himself, "You're not that old." Mirasame Rain didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Dustless looked like he was only 18 or 19 years old. He was very young, but he spoke like he was young and mature. He gave people the feeling of a super old monster coming out of the coffin. By the way, it's worth mentioning that Toka also entered the school, and she is in the same class as Shido. Mirasame Rain suddenly said, "This should be arranged by Kotori and Itsuka, right?" Frowning slightly, Dustless's tone was a bit low, and a strange color flashed on his cheeks. His bright eyes were flickering with thought-provoking light. "You shouldn't be." As if discovering a new world, Mirasame Rain looked at Dustless with a very shocked look. Suddenly she smiled and teased Dustless. "You shouldn't be jealous of Shido and Toka being in the same class. Really, I thought you were a serious monk before. It turns out that you also have 7 emotions and 6 desires." Jealous? Wu-chan laughed involuntarily. What was there in this worthless world that was worthy of his jealousy? What was there that he couldn't get? Was there a need to be jealous of Shido? What was so special about him? Even if he had the unique ability to seal spirits, Dustless got it. Being jealous of Shido was completely empty. What I'm worried about is... Walking to the window, Wu-chan looked at the rows of teaching buildings not far away and suddenly smiled. "I want to tell you that the relationship between Toka and Itoka Shido is very bad. I just hope that Toka won't suddenly pull out a sword to kill Itoka Shido after seeing him." Mirasame Rain was stunned by Dustless's answer. After thinking about it carefully, what Dustless said was not unreasonable. When Ito Shido attacked Toka for the first time, it angered him. If it wasn't for Dustless, Ito Shido would have been killed by Toka. In fact, it was just as Dustless had guessed. In the classroom on the other side, Toka had just met Itoka Shido, and the two instantly had sparks. "Why are you here?" The Night Sword God Toka glared at Itoka Shirdao with displeasure. When Itoka Shirdao started sweating, she said angrily, "Being with a loser like you is really bad luck. What kind of evil thing did Shido do?" Itsuka Kotori, who was in charge of monitoring Toka, was speechless. She was shocked to find that before meeting Shido, Toka's good mood was around 80%, but after meeting Shido, it almost dropped to 0. "Did I offend you? It's none of my business." Itoka Shido looked at the angry Night Sword God Toka with a sad face. He couldn't help but curse in his heart. He felt like he had been shot while lying down. He hadn't done anything to provoke this fierce girl. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2089. Go Shido wanted to cry but had no tears. He said that he really didn't provoke Yato Toho, but he didn't know why Toho was against him, which really made Go Shido angry. "It seems that I was right, these two people are really difficult to get along." Dustless's eyes narrowed into a crescent moon, and the corners of his mouth raised gently, with a faint gloating smile on his face. Although the distance was quite far, for him who had Sharingan, this was not a big problem, it was just a small matter. It was worth mentioning that the development of the current world was not the world of the original work. The encounter between Go Shido and Yato Toho was completely ruined by Dustless, and the relationship between the two was extremely unpleasant. Of course, all of this was because of Wu Chen's mischief. They were originally a pair of immortal companions, yet they'd already become natural enemies that couldn't tolerate each other. "All of this is because of you." Mirasame Rain snorted discontentedly, and there was a rare trace of blame on her tired cheeks. "Because of me?" Hearing this, Dustless snorted and said, "Maybe it's because of me, but please don't forget, if it wasn't because of me, this city would have been destroyed by Yato Toho. "That's right." Mirasame Rain opened her mouth, and her throat seemed to be stuffed with a piece of bone, and it was difficult to continue to speak. She was speechless by Dustless's words. Dustless's words may be a bit alarmist, but it was undeniable that this was an out-and-out fact. It's one thing to be strong, But Wu Chen is really eloquent. Murasame Rain sighed. And then sighed helplessly. Now Yato Toho was still angry, so it was better not to provoke her. I don't seem to have offended you. Inside the classroom, Itsuka Shido looked at Toka with fear. To be honest, he was really scared by her power. After all, one was an elf, and the other was a human. Also, Itsuka Shido had seen the battle between Dustless and Toka Shido. Toka Shido was terrified. That night sword god. The teacher couldn't stand it anymore. Just as he was about to stop the two of them, a crisp bell suddenly rang. Ding ding ding. The bell signaling the end of class rang through the entire corridor. The originally quiet school instantly became noisy. I'll deal with you next time. Just you wait. She glared fiercely at Ohei Shirdao. Then turned around and left arrogantly. Everyone in the class looked at this proud girl in shock. Remembering Dustless's orders, Nightblade God 10 Incense skipped away. This guy. Seeing Toka's figure, Itsuka Shido breathed a sigh of relief and muttered gloomily. Is it because of what happened last time that she's so hostile toward me? When Nightblade God 10 Incense first came to this world, Kotori asked Itsuka Shido to talk to Nightblade God 10 Incense. However, Shido's luck was not good. Dustless happened to attack Nightblade God 10 Incense at that time. And Nightblade God 10 Incense, who didn't know it, put the blame on Itsuka Shido. Therefore, when the two sides met, there was a strong smell of gunpowder. If it wasn't for Dustless at that time, Itsuka Shido might have died. In the sports office. You silly girl. Wu Chen looked at Nightblade God 10 Incense speechlessly and scolded angrily. I asked you to get Kite Origami's words and ask where the Forfune is. I didn't ask you to come to me now. Dustless didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He shouldn't have asked such a serious question to Nightblade God 10 Incense. If she didn't do it right, Nightblade God 10 Incense might find out what she said. Forget it, I'll just find a chance to extract Nightblade God 10 Incense's memory. Dustless waved his hand and looked at Nightblade God 10 Incense impatiently. Go back to class, Nightblade God 10 Incense. I'll take care of Nightblade God 10 Incense. I'll be your new teacher in the next PE class. Don't be late. Suddenly, Nightblade God 10 Incense opened her mouth and looked at Dustless expectantly. Shouldn't it be? Seeing this, the corner of Wu Chen's mouth twitched. He scolded angrily. Little girl, don't tell me you starved to death in your previous life. You just finished your breakfast not long ago, right? Can you eat so much? You let me work, but you don't give me food. This is called docking the wages of laborers. I can sue you. Nightblade God 10 Incense said seriously with a pout. Even laborers come out. As an elf, you really keep up with the times. Did you give her all these? Dustless looked at Murasame Rain gloomily, and the latter just shook her head in a daze. It seemed that she was about to fall asleep. Forget it, take it. Pointing to the transparent belt on the table, which was full of lunchboxes and various snacks, Dustless sighed. As for Nightblade God 10 Incense, I'll do it. Dustless's eyes narrowed. He just needed to find a suitable opportunity to extract her memory. In this way, he could find the whereabouts of Shinoichi Origami. Dustless could also retire from this school. The ability of Rinnegan could extract the memory of others, but it would only hurt the soul of the other party. But after several years of use, Dustless's control of Rinnegan had reached an incredible level. Even if he used the eye power to search the other party's memory, it would not hurt their soul. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 evaluation votes plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2090. Ding ding ding. The bell rang, signaling the start of class. The noisy school quieted down once again. The spacious field was filled with people, including Dustless and a few other familiar faces. You're on time. Dustless walked over from afar with a frivolous and lazy expression. He held his head in his hands and held a blade of grass in his mouth. He wore a white tracksuit and had a faint smile on his face. Compared to the teacher, Dustless looked more like he was taking a stroll. This new PE teacher is actually late for his first class. Does he even care about us? He's not serious at all. The bell rang for 5 minutes, but Dustless was still nowhere to be seen. This caused a group of students to be dissatisfied, and they all started to complain. A bunch of brats are dissatisfied with me. A teasing tone suddenly brushed past everyone's ears. Everyone subconsciously looked over, and a young face entered everyone's ears. Dustless. A few people who knew Dustless were shocked. For example, Tabichi Origami and Itoka Shido were also in disbelief. Today is really strange. Itoka Shido muttered. Shido muttered to himself. 2 strange transfer students came out of nowhere, and even Wuchen entered this school and became a teacher. The 2 transfer students were naturally Toka Toka and Tokisaki Kurumi. Ah, this is really interesting. Tokisaki Kurumi tilted her head with a strange light in her eyes. How dare you be dissatisfied with your teacher? Now run 10 laps around the field. Dustless ordered seriously. In his previous life he envied teachers who gave orders. Ha! Are you kidding? The students all stared at Dustless with their eyes wide open. Although they were dissatisfied, they still ran. Many girls ran over to Dustless to ask for leave. Dustless also nodded in agreement. After all, they were on their menstrual cycle. He couldn't just ignore it. Why did you refuse my leave? Dustless, you must have done it on purpose. Yi Daoshan Shixiang glared at Dustless. Her perfect face was filled with displeasure. Other girls could take leave, but she couldn't. How preposterous. Everyone is different, Yi Zichin said. Dustless glanced at Nightblade God Toka and said seriously, unless your period comes, I can give you time to rest. What's menstruation? Nightblade God Toka was confused. How dare you ask for leave when you don't even know this? Dustless rolled his eyes and pointed at the field. Nightblade God 10 fragrances, just run 20 laps around the field. How dare you? 25 laps. I don't want to. 30 laps then. Dustless, you win. Just wait and see. Nightblade God 10 fragrances stomped her feet. She looked like she wanted to swallow Dustless alive. However, she gave in the end. Dustless was her teacher, and she wasn't as strong as Dustless. Nightblade God 10 fragrances once disobeyed Dustless's orders. The consequences were disastrous. After Dustless suppressed her, she was stripped naked and exposed for hours. Although it was at home, Nightblade God 10 fragrances still lost face. From then on, Dustless began to threaten her. If she disobeyed, he would strip her naked and throw her clothes on the street. Since then, Nightblade God 10 fragrances didn't dare to disobey Dustless's orders. Although his methods were despicable, the effect was unparalleled. Nightblade God 10 fragrances never disobeyed Dustless's orders again. What are you doing here? Tokizaki-san. Dustless lazily sat on the grass as he stared at Toshiaki Kurumi. He yawned and said casually, Are you on leave as well? Are you also on your menstrual cycle? Do you have any evidence? This guy is really shameless. Although she maintained a warm and bright smile on her face, Toshiaki Kurumi was cursing Dustless in her heart. Her period was here. What evidence did he need? Wasn't he just trying to make things difficult for her? How dare you fight with me? Dustless glanced at Toshiaki Kurumi and laughed in his heart. Don't think I don't know that you're on leave, because you want to get close to Itsuka Shido. What period? T. Toshiaki Kurumi came to this school for one person, Itsuka Shido. She dreamed of the day when she and Itsuka Shido would become one. Even so, Dustless underestimated Toshiaki Kurumi and her boldness. The clear chirping of birds could be heard from the blue sky. The cool wind blew from afar, and the willow branches danced in the wind. Since Dustless and Toshiaki Kurumi were so close to each other, some of her hair was blown onto Dustless's face. It smells good. Dustless took a whiff and said subconsciously, Teacher, I have proof that my menstrual cycle is here. At this moment, Tokisaki Kurumi looked at the dazed Wuchen with a smile. You can even prove something like that? Elves are indeed different from the rest. Dustless was stunned when he heard Toshiaki Kurumi's answer. Just as he was about to ask, Toshiaki Kurumi's next move shocked Dustless. Toshiaki Kurumi lifted her uniform skirt and revealed her white fat too. Don't tell me. Seeing this, a trace of emotion flashed across Wuchen's face. He finally understood how Tokisaki Kurumi proved that her period had arrived. Taking off her fatu just because of a disagreement. This Toshiaki Kurumi is really bold. Dustless couldn't help but sigh. If it was any other environment, he could still accept it. However, they were in a public field. Toshiaki Kurumi actually wanted to take off her fatu in front of Dustless. Her boldness was enough to make anyone blush with shame. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus more chapters, 3,000 rewards plus more chapters, 1,000 comments plus more chapters, 500 automatic subscriptions plus more chapters. Chapter 2091. Her white breasts were smooth and flawless, causing one's imagination to run wild. Even Dustless, who had been calm for many years, felt ripples in his heart at this moment. Long stockings wrapped around her white thighs, revealing her flawless skin that was as exquisite as jade. Under the black stockings, her jade-like legs were faintly discernible, causing one's heartstrings to throb. Unknowingly, Dustless's breathing had quickened. You really dare to take it off? His aggressive gaze circled around Toshiaki Kuzo's trousers. Dustless's lips curled into a rare smile. In all fairness, Dustless didn't believe that Toshiaki Kuzo would be so daring as to take off her breasts in public. Only an idiot would do that. But even so, for the sake of being on the safe side, Dustless still secretly set up a gray barrier to prevent others from spying. This guy, Toshiaki Kuzo, revealed her white breasts. When she saw that Dustless wasn't moved, she felt vexed and couldn't help but mutter, "Does this guy really want me to take off my breasts in front of him?" Toshiaki Kuzo was secretly depressed. She thought that it was just for show, but who would have thought that Dustless would look at her with such anticipation? If such a person could be a teacher, he was simply a beast in human face. "Student Toshiaki, how are you going to prove to me that your period is here?" Seeing Toshiaki Kuzo in a difficult position, Dustless held back his laughter and pretended to be calm. "If you don't prove it, I'll punish you by making you run 100 laps around the field." 100 laps. Hearing this, Toshiaki Kuzo's face flashed with anger. Her eyes clearly emitted a haze. Even though it was just a flash, Dustless caught it clearly. 1 lap around the school field was about 500 meters. 100 laps would be 500 by 100, which was almost 50,000 meters. "You did it on purpose, didn't you?" Finally, Tokisaki Kurumi could no longer maintain his composure and coldly said, "Brat, do you know how the word death is written?" Looking at Dustless's despicable face, Tokisaki Kurumi was certain that Dustless was doing this on purpose. "I really don't know how to write the word death." Dustless nodded. He looked at Tokisaki Kurumi and said seriously, "Why don't you teach me? This guy really doesn't know what's good for him." Hearing this, Tokisaki Kurumi was enraged. His calm eyes flashed with a savage light. He took out a spear and aimed it at Dustless. He laughed sinisterly. "Very well, I'll tell you how death is written. It's written with your blood." It was no wonder that Tokisaki Kurumi was so angry. Other girls could ask for leave if they were on their period, but when it was her turn, she had to strip off her fatness to verify her identity. How could she be so shameless? "You're on your period and you have a bad temper. Shoot me." Dustless lazily slept on the grass with his eyes closed. He said casually, "Tokisaki Kurumi, no, it's more appropriate to call you Incubus. That seems to be your code name. If you start a fight here, it'll be very difficult for you to sneak into this school in the future. You know I'm an elf." Hearing this, Tokisaki Kurumi's pupils shrank. Her body instinctively moved away from Dustless. "You're really forgetful. When we first met, didn't you take the initiative to introduce yourself as an elf? What a slow-witted girl." Dustless shook his head and picked up a blade of grass out of boredom. "How dare you mock me when I'm pointing a spear at you? You're just a mere human. How dare you?" Hearing this, Tokisaki Kurumi's expression turned cold and pulled the trigger. Bang! A large bullet was fired from the spear and headed straight for Dustless's head. "Goodbye, foolish human." Tokisaki Kurumi blew out a breath of hot air charmingly. A morbid smile appeared on her face as she stared straight at Dustless. She was enjoying the beauty of a dying person. When a person was about to die, They would reveal an unprecedented fear. This was also Tokisaki Kurumi's favorite moment. Pucci. The bullet tore through Dustless's head and pierced through it. The wound was large enough to fit an adult's fist. How boring. At least let me admire your pitiful expression when you die. It'll be nice to have a memory. Tokisaki Kurumi was unhappy. Dustless remained calm until the moment of his death. Then, do you remember my pitiful expression? A ghostly indifferent voice sounded out of nowhere. Then a cold wind blew behind her. Fear flashed through Tokisaki Kurumi's eyes as she turned around and fired without hesitation. Bang! Another large bullet flew out and hit the bullseye. An obvious hole appeared on the head of the person who spoke. One had to admit that Tokisaki Kurumi's marksmanship was indeed amazing. Even if she didn't look at the target, she could still explode the opponent's head with just her intuition. However, the strange thing was that even though the person's head was blown off and the bullet pierced through his left eye, his body was still standing firmly. His right eye was still quietly looking at Tokisaki Kurumi. His breathing was even and he was very calm. His delicate face stared straight at Tokisaki Kurumi. You're not dead. Tokisaki Kurumi's tone was several times louder as she looked at Dustless in horror. After being shot in the head, this guy was still standing there as if nothing had happened. Was this still a weak human? If Dustless was an elf, he didn't have psychic waves and there had never been a male elf before. What kind of monster was this guy? Didn't you say you were going to teach me how to write the word death? Haven't you finished it yet? What a lousy language teacher. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2092. I underestimated him. Looking at the lazy Dustless cautiously, Tokisaki Kurumi felt a rare headache. She frowned when she saw the gap in Dustless's eye and her eyebrows were almost knitted together. Could it be that this guy can recover from any skill? Tokisaki Kurumi muttered to herself. Even though she spoke softly, the slick Dustless heard every word. Recover? Wrong. Dustless shook his head and explained softly. You've never injured me, so how can you recover? This is just the elemental ability of the glint fruit. It can ignore all physical attacks. Ignore physical attacks? Tokisaki Kurumi was the first to recover from her shock. Her first reaction was to laugh out loud, mocking Dustless for overestimating himself. How could a mere mortal have such a heaven-defying ability like ignore physical attacks? What else could it be other than the ravings of a lunatic? That was simply wishful thinking. Surrender, and I can give you a good job. Dustless's tone revealed a rare trace of gentleness. His expression was also very serious. Good job? Hearing this, Tokisaki Kurumi was stunned for a moment before she sneered. You know that I'm an elf, right? Do you think there's any job in this world that's suitable for elves? Tokisaki Kurumi sneered at the end of her sentence. In this world, no matter who it was, they hated elves. After all, every time they appeared, they would cause a lot of trouble. They were almost synonymous with hate. This was especially true for the Eurasian air disaster that happened decades ago. It had taken the lives of hundreds of millions of people. Other people don't have jobs suitable for elves, but I do. Staring at Tokisaki Kurumi, Dustless smiled mysteriously and said seriously, I already have 2 servants, Yansei and Toka. Why don't you? Bang bang bang. However, before Dustless could continue his nonsense, a series of bullets were fired at him. Pucci, Pucci, Pucci. Just like before, Dustless didn't dodge and allowed the bullet to pierce through his head. If an ordinary person's head was smashed and a few large holes appeared, they would naturally die without a doubt. However, there were exceptions to everything. In Dustless's head, after a few seconds, the wound was covered by light and quickly healed. New skin grew. Damn it, could it really ignore physical attacks? Tokisaki Kurumi clicked her tongue. Her eyes were fixed on Dustless, revealing a look of deep shock. Why would such a godlike ability appear in the hands of a gigolo? Tokisaki Kurumi pouted as she spoke in a sour tone. She was like a jealous little wife who had been scolded. There are many things you don't understand, such as this. Dustless turned into a stream of light and rushed out. This damn pervert! Seeing the incoming light, Tokisaki Kurumi was shocked, and her beautiful eyes were filled with panic. Dustless's speed was something that even an elf like her couldn't achieve, let alone a human. In her panic, Tokisaki Kurumi quickly pulled the trigger again. Bang bang bang. Several more bullets flew out and pierced through Dustless's body. Swish swish swish. But what was strange and puzzling was that even after being attacked, the speed of the light didn't change. The dazzling light continued to rush towards her. Can he really ignore physical attacks? Tokisaki Kurumi was helpless. Dustless's body was transparent. Even if she could see him, she couldn't hit him. All attacks were ineffective against him. Damn it, I didn't expect to use my true strength to deal with a human. Tokisaki Kurumi was unresigned. She seemed to be unhappy that she lost to a human. After all, there was a difference between humans and elves. But today, Tokisaki Kurumi was teased by an ordinary human like Wu Chen. Especially Wu Chen's disdainful tone and unyielding attitude made her feel uncomfortable. She was clearly looking down on others. Being suppressed by a human made Tokisaki Kurumi unhappy and aggrieved. Finally, after gathering all her emotions, Tokisaki Kurumi decided to use her true strength to teach Dustless a lesson. Boom boom boom. Tokisaki Kurumi's young and tender body suddenly erupted with a powerful energy fluctuation. Following that, her outer clothes burst apart and turned into a black and blood-red dress. At the same time, a huge clock hung behind Tokisaki Kurumi's back. Is this your angelic form? Dustless rubbed his chin with interest and said expectantly, Your ability seems to be called Carving Emperor, right? I remember that you can reverse time, teleport, and even slow down time. How do you know so much about my ability? Who told you that? Tokisaki Kurumi's eyes widened. It was hard to believe that Dustless was making it up. If that was the case, it would be too much of a coincidence. Everything Dustless said was true. That's not important. Dustless waved his arm and moved his thumb gently. Bring it on. Little Dud is going to release your most beautiful light. Don't ask me why, because this is your best performance. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus more chapters, 3,000 rewards plus more chapters, 1,000 comments plus more chapters, 500 automatic subscriptions plus more chapters. Chapter 2093. Even if you want to be arrogant, you should know when to stop. Tokisaki Kurumi's eyes were filled with hostility. Dustless's domineering tone was as if he was declaring ownership of an item, completely ignoring the feelings of others. This arrogant tone gave Tokisaki Kurumi the illusion that she was someone else's possession. Repent for your sins. Tokisaki Kurumi glared at Dustless as she suddenly aimed the rifle at her own head and pulled the trigger. One bullet. Bang. Without a doubt, Tokisaki Kurumi ended up with a headshot. But strangely, the moment her head was hit, Tokisaki Kurumi disappeared without a trace. This is... Dustless frowned as he began to look around. Go to hell. At this moment, a black shadow suddenly appeared in front of him. Dustless felt a cold sensation on his forehead. He looked up and saw a black muzzle aimed at his head. This is teleportation. Dustless's lips trembled as a rare fluctuation of emotion appeared in his voice. Farewell. Bang. With a sinister laugh, Tokisaki Kurumi decisively pulled the trigger. Poochie. Since the muzzle was aimed at Dustless's head, it was aimed at his forehead. The moment the bullet left the rifle, it tore apart Dustless's head. The penetrated head did not splatter brain matter as expected. Instead, a large amount of photons surged out from the wound. There was not even a trace of blood, let alone bright red brain matter. Damn it. Seeing this, Tokisaki Kurumi stomped her feet in anger. As I said before, I'm a flash person who ate the glint fruit. I can elementalize. This kind of pure physical attack is just asking for humiliation. Dustless shook his head as the wound on his forehead began to heal. I didn't expect you to be able to teleport. Dustless looked at Tokisaki Kurumi in surprise. He lowered his head and thought about her ability before shaking his head. No, it's not teleportation. It's time acceleration. You know very well. Tokisaki Kurumi's face tensed up. She had mixed feelings in her heart. She wanted to cry but had no tears. Her trick was seen through just once, and this feeling was truly unpleasant. But so what if you can see through it? Can you block it? Looking at Dustless with disdain, Tokisaki Kurumi aimed at her own head again. She was extremely confident. What an ignorant little girl. Dustless shook his head and sighed. Soon after, he raised a finger. If I wanted to kill you, you would have been killed 1,000 times within a minute. Under the speed of light, everything was laughable. You can try if you can. If you can stop me, I don't mind agreeing to your barbaric conditions. After all, the strong are the masters of this world. Tokisaki Kurumi charmingly smiled. Although her words sounded nice, her eyes were filled with contempt. She clearly didn't put Dustless in her eyes. Bang! Tokisaki Kurumi pulled the trigger again. The bullet from the rifle flew towards Dustless's head. At the same time, Dustless's figure gradually lost its texture and turned into a stream of light that rushed out. How fast was the bullet? That wasn't important. What was certain was that the bullet would pierce through Tokisaki Kurumi's head the moment it left the gun barrel. But what made Tokisaki Kurumi dumbfounded was that after a few seconds, she was also fine. Where was the bullet? Out of curiosity, Tokisaki Kurumi looked over. It would have been better if she didn't look. After witnessing this shocking scene, Tokisaki Kurumi's pupils shrunk. Her beautiful eyes were filled with deep shock. She saw a seemingly delicate arm easily catch a golden bullet between her middle finger and index finger. She shifted her gaze and looked at the owner of the arm. The culprit was Dustless. Swish, swish, swish. After being stunned for a few seconds, Tokisaki Kurumi hurriedly retreated. Fortunately, I reacted fast enough. Otherwise, I would have been killed by this guy. After putting some distance between herself and Dustless, Tokisaki Kurumi heaved a sigh of relief. You reacted fast enough? The cold voice carried with it a cold wind. Tokisaki Kurumi immediately shivered. This feeling was no different from falling into an ice cave. It was suffocating. Who is it? Tokisaki Kurumi raised her head in fear, being stared at by this ruthless gaze. She felt like she was wandering in hell. What a boastful little girl. The cold voice sounded again, reflecting endless ridicule and disdain. It's you. Following the source of the voice, she saw Dustless. Your reaction is fast? You think too highly of yourself. In front of the speed of light, do you think your fast reaction is useful? I really don't know where your morbid confidence comes from. What a joke. Any move under the speed of light was futile. Child's play. Dustless threw out the rifle bullet in his hand. He crossed his arms and said lazily, Carving Emperor's long needle and short needle are ancient rifles and pistols respectively. They fire Carving Emperor's ability as bullets. If the bullet doesn't hit the target, you won't be able to activate your ability. In other words, the moment you fire the bullet, I can completely stop it, Dustless said confidently. The bullet was fast, but it was still a far cry from the speed of light. This guy. Tokisaki Kurumi's expression changed. Her hair on both sides of her temples was covered in water droplets. If it was in the past, Tokisaki Kurumi would have treated this as a joke. However, looking at Carving Emperor's bullet on the ground, Tokisaki Kurumi couldn't laugh. This bullet was intercepted by Dustless. It was the bullet she fired. The moment it was about to shatter her head, it was intercepted by Dustless. If the bullet couldn't hit the target and Carving Emperor's ability couldn't be activated, then Tokisaki Kurumi, an elf, became immortal. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2094. In this world, there was no invincible ability. Every ability had a flaw that no one knew about. It was invincible now because no one had discovered its weakness. For example, Dustless's glinting fruit, elementization, ability was invincible in this world. But in the previous world where pirates were everywhere, they could easily touch Dustless's body, such as armament hockey and sea stone. The reason why Tokisaki Kurumi could run rampant in the past was because she hadn't met a natural enemy. But this time she was unlucky. She didn't look at the almanac when she went out and met a powerful enemy like Dustless. My chances of winning are slim, maybe even none. Tokisaki Kurumi was quite unwilling to give up. She calculated the chances of winning, and helplessly found that she didn't have the ability to fight Dustless. Dustless's speed was faster than the speed of a bullet. In other words, he could easily defeat Tokisaki Kurumi before she used her ability. Blocking the bullet with his bare hands was the best example. I lost. She threw away the 2 guns in her hand and seemed to have accepted her fate. It wasn't that she wanted to surrender. The ability of Emperor was actually a bullet. If it couldn't hit the target, the ability couldn't be used. Kill me if you have the guts. Even if she was at her wit's end, Tokisaki Kurumi still bit her thin lips and looked at Dustless very stubbornly. She sneered. If you don't kill me, I won't let you go and harass you for the rest of your life. As her voice fell, Tokisaki Kurumi's different colored eyes flashed with a cold chill. She threatened. Not only you, but also your 2 little servants, Night Sword God Toka and Yoshino. I will bury them with me. Harass me for the rest of my life. Hearing this, Dustless's expression was extremely strange. He said sarcastically, I remember that you didn't want to be my maid. Now you want to harass me for the rest of my life. You exposed your shameless heart, and still want to harass me for the rest of my life. Shameless woman. Puh. Tokisaki Kurumi almost vomited blood. She looked at Dustless with fire in her eyes. If you don't kill me, when you fall into my hands in the future, I will make you beg for death. That's it. Although Tokisaki Kurumi's tone was harsh and aggressive, as if she wanted to swallow Dustless alive, the latter's reaction was calm. There wasn't even a trace of anger. Tokisaki Kurumi, stop trying to be smart. Do you think I don't know your abilities? Dustless's cold face raised a bit of mockery. He said sarcastically, Carve Emperor's Bullet of 8 can make his past reappear. Although the doppelganger doesn't have the strength of the main body, it has its own will and spiritual equipment. It can be stored indefinitely in the shadow, and can be summoned at any time before it is used up. This was also the reason why Tokisaki Kurumi could revive after being killed so many times. Who told you all this? Tokisaki Kurumi sucked in a breath of cold air, and looked at Dustless in a daze. She naturally wouldn't tell a stranger about her trump card, so where did Dustless learn about it? Even if it was nonsense, it was too much of a coincidence, and what he said was true. Who told me? In fact, it's very simple. Maybe I have the same ability as you. Maybe it's just a guess of our abilities. Wu Chen shrugged perfunctorily. Of course, he wouldn't say that he had transmigrated. That's why I won't kill you. Even if I do, it's useless. You'll revive. Suddenly, Dustless rubbed his chin. The corners of his mouth curled up slightly, revealing a teasing smile. Since I can't kill you, I'll torture you. What are you trying to do? Tokisaki Kurumi's heart skipped a beat when she heard this. She knew that things weren't going well and subconsciously took a step back. I can't forgive someone who is hostile to me and dares to provoke me. Don't worry. I just want to give you a punishment that you'll never forget. Dustless walked over slowly. Every step he took, Tokisaki Kurumi would feel an inexplicable pressure. She couldn't help but feel irritated. Bam! Tokisaki Kurumi was stunned when she bumped into something behind her. This is Lai Chanhai's field. Where did the wall come from? The moment she turned her head, Tokisaki Kurumi was stunned. She suddenly realized that she and Dustless were trapped in a small transparent space. Is this a barrier? When was it set up? No wonder no one paid attention to our duel. Tokisaki Kurumi touched the invisible but real barrier in a daze. The hard touch made her feel a little dazed. To be able to set up a barrier without being noticed by Tokisaki Kurumi, was it because she was too engrossed in it? Or was Dustless just too mysterious? Could it be? She stared straight at Dustless. Tokisaki Kurumi stared straight at Dustless. Her eyes flickered nonstop. Girls tend to have wild imaginations. With such strength, could it be that she's the starter sprite? Dustless's strength was terrifying. He was definitely not an ordinary human. Nor was he like AST's Tokichi Origami. He did not need to rely on equipment. Dustless relied on his own strength. Starter sprite? Although Tokisaki Kurumi's voice was soft, Dustless still heard it. What the hell is that? I'm not, and I don't know much about it. I'm not interested in knowing. All you need to know is that anyone who dares to be presumptuous in my territory must be punished. Your territory? Tokisaki Kurumi had a strange expression. She looked at the huge field. Could it be that Dustless's territory was Lichon-hai? I'm talking about this planet, Dustless added after seeing the confused look on the girl's face. All right, Tokisaki Kurumi, accept your punishment. As soon as he finished speaking, Dustless blinked to Tokisaki Kurumi's side. His sudden action almost made Tokisaki Kurumi vomit blood. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 reviews plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2095. Dustless skillfully lifted Tokisaki Kurumi's skirt, exposing her fair skin to Dustless. Bastard, put it down. Tokisaki Kurumi felt a chill on her buttocks. She yelled angrily and slapped Dustless out of reflex. You still want to resist? Seeing this, Wuchen smiled disdainfully and easily grabbed the attacking arm. Damn it! With her arm caught, Tokisaki Kurumi struggled with all her might and cursed. Damn you better kill me or else I'll. Or else what? Wuchen sneered when he heard that. The arm that was raised high fell down. Slap. A bright red palm print appeared on Tokisaki Kurumi's buttocks. This time Wuchen didn't show any mercy at all. The clear red palm print occupied a quarter of the entire area of her perky buttocks. On her fair skin, the palm print was particularly conspicuous. You're already a captive and you still dare to be so arrogant. If I don't teach you a lesson, you'll really think that I'm the reincarnation of a merciful bodhisattva. Dustless looked into Tokisaki Kurumi's eyes and chuckled. How is it? How do you feel? Do you still want to resist? Why don't I do it again? As he spoke, Dustless raised his arm. Ouch. No. Tokisaki Kurumi gritted her teeth in pain. Tears welled up in her eyes. She purposely said in a coquettish tone, I'll obey you, okay? As long as you don't hit me, I'll do anything to you. Phew. Tokisaki Kurumi moved closer to Dustless's ear and blew a mouthful of hot air into Dustless's right ear. Don't doubt my words. A strong man like you is very likable. Dustless remained silent. He didn't respond, nor did he reject Tokisaki Kurumi's provocation. However, he didn't accept it either. Although you're a little strong, you're still just a lecher in the end. Seeing Dustless's silence, Tokisaki Kurumi's eyes glinted. She knew that she had a chance. Silence meant tacit consent. She stretched her waist and displayed her graceful body to Dustless. It had to be said that Toshiaki Kurumi was a true seductress. Her figure was great, and her appearance was impeccable. The places that were supposed to be protruding were not flat, and the places that were supposed to be protruding were also protruding. Especially Toshiaki Kurumi, who was different from the elves. She was extremely bold, and would not be restrained by worldly norms. She was a seductress that could make one's blood boil. Am I pretty? Blinking her crystalline pupils, Tokisaki Kurumi purposely used some sensitive parts of her body in an attempt to draw out the evil fire in his heart. However, Dustless only glanced at Tokisaki Kurumi. His casual reply almost made her vomit blood. Not bad. You have a nose and eyes. Dustless glanced at Tokisaki Kurumi and answered casually. Tokisaki Kurumi's mouth twitched. If she could, she would have bitten Dustless to death. What kind of reply was that? Who didn't have eyes and nose? He was obviously trying to brush her off. You still dare to pretend to be calm? Tokisaki Kurumi glared at Dustless and sneered inwardly. Don't think that you're not a lecherous bastard just because you're pretending to be calm. How about I dance for you? Tokisaki Kurumi said with a smile as she swayed her snake-like waist. Really? Dustless's bored eyes lit up. He nodded silently. Try to be quick. Tokisaki Kurumi snorted in her mind. She wanted to use this dance to confuse Dustless, or find a chance to escape. After pulling away from Wu-chan for a while, Tokisaki Kurumi lightly tapped on the grass with her feet. Soon after, her graceful body soared into the air like a dragonfly skimming the surface of the water. Her graceful body gently rotated, looking quite artistic. In terms of dancing, although Dustless was a layman, he was still a little dazed. What a lecherous bastard. Tokisaki Kurumi saw Dustless staring at her in a daze. She couldn't help but feel proud. Dustless was like a monk who didn't care about her. Now he was staring at her in a daze. It was obvious that it was all an act. Men are really lecherous bastards. Tokisaki Kurumi snorted and began to ponder. What kind of method should I use to escape? Should I use a direct method? Come here. A satisfied voice suddenly sounded. Tokisaki Kurumi snapped out of her thoughts. She turned to look at Dustless, who was looking at her with interest, and frowned. Is this guy trying to make me do it? Tokisaki Kurumi was nervous. If Dustless used force, she couldn't do anything. She couldn't use her ability and could only wait for death. Very good. Not bad. Dustless gave her a thumbs up and looked at Tokisaki Kurumi. How about this? How? Tokisaki Kurumi, who was close to Dustless, subconsciously took a step back. This guy was going to use force. You're good at gymnastics. I'll leave the task of teaching everyone radio gymnastics to you, Dustless said with satisfaction as he patted Tokisaki Kurumi's shoulder. Huh? Gymnastics? Tokisaki Kurumi looked at Dustless with a dumbfounded expression. That's ballet, not radio gymnastics, she yelled frantically. Dustless scratched his head awkwardly and said apologetically. So it's dancing. I thought you were performing radio gymnastics for me. I even wanted to ask you to be my PE class representative. Plop! Tokisaki Kurumi fainted from anger after hearing Dustless's answer. She was foaming at the mouth and regretting communicating with Dustless. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus more chapters, 3,000 rewards plus more chapters, 1,000 comments plus more chapters, 500 automatic subscriptions plus more chapters. Chapter 2096. But there were some things that could not be easily resolved. Just like the current situation, how did Dustless take away his pendant? Chong Gongjun expressed that he did not feel anything at all. He did not even look at it. Looks like my training is not enough. Thinking of this, Chong Gongjuna suffered a great blow. If Wu Chen had wanted to kill him just now, perhaps he would have become a corpse. It's just an elf. I'm not going to keep quiet after being humiliated like this. Chong Gongjun gritted his teeth and looked at Dustless with hatred. Who is this? Out of curiosity, Dustless opened the accessory in his hand. What came into view was an old photo. The people in the photo were two young children, both of them had blue hair. The two children were very young, probably only a few years old. Who allowed you to look at other people's belongings? Chong Gongjun's face flashed with anger when he saw this. He tiptoed lightly and rushed forward. Slash. The sword light cut through Dustless's body. However, the feeling this time was different from before. Chong Gongjun clearly felt that he had hit something hard, and looked over subconsciously. How is this possible? How can a human know an elf's body be so hard? Chong Gongjun's eyes widened and almost fell out. He looked over and saw that the person who blocked the beam saber was a Fairfinger. Her skin was as white as snow, and her skin was as smooth as a newborn baby's. It was this finger that looked like it could not withstand a single blow, as if it would break at any moment. However, at this moment, it was extraordinarily sturdy, unbelievably blocking the tip of the beam saber. What's there to be surprised about? Dustless carefully examined the girl's shocked expression. He teased her softly and said, being too shocked only shows that you are narrow-minded. However, it's normal for you to be shocked. If I didn't have some means to shock you, how could I tame that stubborn little elf, Night Sword God Toka, with my fists? Not everyone was like Itsuka Shido, who had countless beautiful girls throwing themselves at him when his protagonist aura was slightly activated. Dustless did not think that he had that kind of charisma. Of course, he didn't need it. In this world, Only the fist was the absolute truth. For those who were not convinced, they could use their fists to make the other party make the right choice. Don't flatter yourself. Chong Gongjinna, who was extremely displeased, suddenly retreated in a flash when he heard this. He stopped when he was a dozen meters away from Dustless. Soon after, a piercing cold light shot out from his eyes. He forcefully stomped his feet on the ground and charged over at an even more terrifying speed. Just a mere sprite. The incomparably sharp laser blade slashed towards Dustless's head. You're calling me an elf again? Forget it, you can think whatever you want. Hearing this, Dustless only shook his head and smiled without saying anything. All along, he had been thought of as an elf, the incarnation of evil. However, Dustless didn't care about this and was too lazy to explain. In any case, in this long life of his, he was often misunderstood. Swish. Swish. A light blade that could cut through iron like mud descended from the sky, and it looked like it was about to crush Dustless's head. The scene seemed to have frozen, and time seemed to have stopped at this moment. At this moment, Dustless suddenly opened his arms, and a turbulent repulsive force erupted from his body. Chakra instantly erupted. Shinra Tensei. Bang. Chong Gongjinna's little face instantly turned pale as if he had been slapped in the face. His body flew out in a sorry state. What kind of elf is this guy? At first, I thought he could manipulate light, but now it seems that it's not that simple. He can even manipulate an unimaginable force like repulsive force. Chong Gongjinna supported his trembling body and looked at Dustless warily. He muttered to himself cautiously. This is the first time I've seen a male elf. Are they all so powerful? Chong Gongjinna's little face kept changing. He stared at Dustless's calm expression and felt an inexplicable pressure. He was sure that this annoying guy had not even used 1/10 of his strength. Otherwise, he wouldn't be so calm. Young lady, keep coming. Are you going to give up? Dustless curled his fingers and said with a smile. Your brother is a very strange person. Now his sister is also different from the rest. It's rare. How about this? Seeing that you have an excellent constitution and delicate features, I think you'll have a better future if you join me. Dream on. I'm not so low as to join the elves. Chong Gongjinna snorted coldly and rejected Dustless's offer. Then he swooped down again. Like a moth to the flame. Seeing this, Dustless shook his head helplessly and narrowed his eyes slightly. The moment Chong Gongjinna was about to make contact with him, his right arm suddenly shot out like lightning. Bang! He grabbed Chong Gongjinna's neck skillfully, smashed him to the ground, and held him down tightly. Cough, cough, cough. With his throat grabbed, Chong Gongjinna coughed and struggled with all his might. He kicked Dustless with all his might and attacked his vital parts. Young lady, the game of house is over. Dustless smiled as he grabbed the young lady's throat easily. Also, I advise you not to resist me. If I use a little more force, your throat will be crushed in an instant. Bones mixed with blood. Do you want to see how beautiful they are? This sentence was like a sharp awl piercing into Chong Gongjinna's chest. His limbs, which were still resisting, calmed down. His dull eyes stared straight at Dustless. That's more like it. Dustless smiled and let go of his arm. The moment he let go of Chong Gongjinna's neck, something strange happened. Chapter 2097. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. A black shadow leaped into the air with a sharp blade in his hand. He aimed at Dustless's back with a ferocious expression and stabbed down with all his might. Crack! Dustless's back was pierced through like a piece of paper by the mysterious person, leaving a huge hole. It's not over yet. Changia Shina, who had freed herself from the struggle, revealed a ferocious expression. She held a beam saber in her hand and slashed down without hesitation. Puchi. The previous insult had obviously provoked Changia Shina's anger. She slashed Dustless's head with her sword. Puchi. 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 As if she was still angry, Changia Shina slashed down with her sword again. After slicing Dustless's body into 8 pieces, she stopped with satisfaction. Huff huff huff. Although it happened in a split second, Changia Shina had slashed dozens of times. She was exhausted. Beads of sweat slowly dripped down her hair. Thank you, Tashiichi Origami. While wiping her sweat, Changia Shina thanked Tashiichi Origami with a smile. She praised. So you were pretending to be unconscious all this time. You're really smart. It's not that I'm smart. Tashiichi Origami glanced at Changia Shina and analyzed. In the end, this guy was too careless. He thought he was invincible. He underestimated us. And Tashiichi Origami seemed to have recalled something. Her eyes were rolling. I heard your conversation just now. Your brother is Itsuka Shido? I forgot to tell you. I'm his girlfriend. If you don't mind, you can call me sister-in-law. Sister-in-law. Changia Shina's eyes suddenly shrunk. She was stunned. Yes. As if she was narrating something very ordinary. Tashiichi Origami's tone was calm. He's liked me for many years. I've liked him for many years too. Many years. Changia Shina broke out in cold sweat. How many years was many years? Itsuka Shido was around 17 years old this year. Buzz buzz buzz. Suddenly an unusual dazzling light flashed in the dark enclosed space. The huge flash was as dazzling as the sun. The two girls instinctively closed their eyes. This light. Could it be that the guy has revived again? Chong Gongzhen's tone carried a trace of unconcealable shock. Just as he was about to step forward to find out what was going on, he suddenly felt a chill on his back, as if he had been targeted by the god of death. What a heartless girl who likes to bite the hand that feeds her. I didn't kill you just now, but you cut me into 8 pieces. I must teach you a lesson. The moment he finished speaking, Chong Gongjina was shocked to find that he was being picked up. Let me go. Don't touch me with your dirty hands, or I'll chop you up. Chong Gongjin blushed and turned his head to glare at Dustless. To his grief and indignation, he found that he was like a pet that was simply picked up by Dustless. No matter how hard he struggled, he could not escape from the devil's grasp. You want to chop me up? You deserve a beating. Dustless raised his arm and stared at the girl's fair legs. They were flawless, as beautiful and clean as snow. However, this was not Dustless's target. What kind of crappy equipment is this? Are you trying to go against me? Staring at the girl's butt, Dustless frowned. Chong Gongjina's butt was covered by the AST member's equipment. There was no place for him to attack. He wants to hit my butt. Fortunately, I have the equipment to block it for me, or else this stinky hooligan would have succeeded. Seeing Dustless frowning, Chong Gongjina, who had been defeated, showed a rare hint of joy. She suddenly felt that this heavy equipment was too fitting. You should give up. Kill me if you have the guts. Chong Gongjina's eyes regained some color, and her tone sounded rather arrogant. I'm a very kind person. If you want to give up, then I'll give up. Besides, you're so cute, I can't bear to kill you. Dustless smiled mysteriously. Then you should just let us go. I promise that I won't trouble you in the future. Chong Gongjina purposely acted coquettishly, her small face showing a very cute curve. TSK, I can spare your life, but punishment is necessary. The mysterious smile on Dustless's face turned into a teasing one. What are you trying to do? Chong Gongjina felt numb after being stared at by Dustless's sneaky eyes. She felt a sense of fear that she had never felt before. That pair of bright eyes was terrifying, as if they were going to swallow her alive. Don't worry, it's nothing difficult. I just want to explore your body. Dustless smiled casually. Explore my body? Chong Gongjina suddenly panicked and shouted. Don't you mess around. Let me tell you, I'm sick there. And I'm having my period. Sick there. Upon hearing that, Dustless was stunned for a moment. Looking at the terrified face of the young girl, he pondered for a while and his eyes flashed with understanding. He sneered and said, Little brat, although you're not bad looking and will be a beauty in the future, you think too highly of yourself. You're not worthy of having sex with me. You. Chong Gongjina was enraged by Dustless's words. Her face turned red as she said, Didn't you say that you wanted to explore my body? Yes. Dustless nodded and said lazily, I said that because there's something wrong with your body. Someone has done something to it. You can only live for about 10 years at most. If I don't save you, you'll definitely die. And now, You're delusional enough to think that I'll marry a little girl like you. Even if you're narcissistic, there's a limit to it. You're not worthy of me. Uft. Upon hearing that, Chongongjina was so enraged by Dustless that she started foaming at the mouth. In the end, she rolled her eyes and fainted like Tokisaki Kurumi. Those words were too hurtful. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus more chapters, 3,000 rewards plus more chapters, 1,000 comments plus more chapters, 500 automatic subscriptions plus more chapters. Chapter 2098. The temperament of young people these days is really bad. They can't even take a little blow. Really useless. Dustless shook his head in disappointment. He lowered his head and looked at the young girl who was foaming at the mouth. He could only sigh in boredom. She really couldn't take the blow. What about you? Dustless turned his head and looked at Koichi Origami with a smile. There was a hint of teasing on his face. What do you want to do? Koichi Origami looked at Dustless cautiously. She was frightened by his stare and her body couldn't help but tremble slightly. Even though Koichi Origami hid it very well, Dustless's fiery golden eyes saw it clearly. No flaw could escape his eyes. What do you plan to do to me? I'll say it in advance. I already have a maid to choose. As for you, kill me if you want. I'm not interested in other things, especially servants. Koichi Origami interrupted Dustless impolitely and turned her head away in an extremely arrogant manner. Become my servant? When did I let you say you want to be my servant? Glancing at Koichi Origami indifferently, Dustless bluntly said, You want to be my servant? I'm the one who despises you. You. Hearing this, Koichi Origami's mouth twitched. She almost couldn't help but pounce on Dustless and bite him to death. This guy's words were really too infuriating. You what? What kind of person do you think can never be my follower? Dustless looked at Koichi Origami with disdain and impolitely commented, It's your good fortune that I have my eyes on you. You should thank the heavens. It must be a blessing from the heavens. If it's really a blessing, why didn't you disappear? Koichi Origami looked at Dustless, unwilling to admit defeat. TSK, what a vicious woman. You actually prayed for me to disappear. Dustless looked at Koichi Origami with disdain. After staring at her for a while, he shook his head and said, No, you're too far away. What do you mean? Yuichi Origami frowned and asked. Originally, she disdained to pay attention to Dustless, but this guy always made a surprising move. If things went wrong, she would suffer a big loss, causing Yuichi Origami to suffer. I said you're not fit to be my servant. Dustless shook his head and looked carefully at the origami before saying, You're too scheming. If I put you by my side, you might threaten others. Origami looked at Dustless expressionlessly, but her heart was secretly happy. She couldn't wait for Dustless to kick her out. However, since you're my captive, I've decided. Dustless looked at Yuichi Origami playfully and suddenly announced, I don't need you to be my maid. I already have Shirshyang and Shirshyo. I have enough maids. How about this? I still need someone to help me wash my feet. Why don't you do it? Plop. Kite One Origami's eyes rolled back, and he staggered and almost fell down. Don't go too far. Origami was fuming with anger. She rarely got angry and her mental state was unstable. But at this moment, she was really infuriated by Wu Chen's words. Who do you think I am? You actually want me to help you wash your feet. This is simply bullying. Kite One Origami picked up the beam saber, but this time, she didn't attack Dustless. Instead, she put it on her own throat. Are you planning to commit suicide? Dustless looked at Kite One Origami in surprise and couldn't help but ask himself. I actually forced you to commit suicide. Am I that bad? Kite One Origami didn't speak. She just looked at Dustless coldly. Finally, she closed her eyes in despair, and the beam saber slashed at her own neck unceremoniously. If you die, I will castrate Itsuka Shido. This sentence seemed to contain supreme magic. The beam saber that was about to break her neck stopped beside her neck, and there were some bloodstains. Are you really that despicable? Kite 1 Origami stared at Dustless with deep pain. This guy's strength was 100 points, but his despicable methods were 1,000 points. You can continue to commit suicide. Shrugging, Dustless said very casually, and then walked away lazily. I promise I will castrate Itsuka Shido. You. Kite 1 Origami gritted her teeth, but she was helpless. Itsuka Shido was her most precious person. Kite 1 Origami didn't want him to be implicated. Clang. In desperation, Kite 1 Origami surrendered, threw the beam saber on the ground, and looked at Dustless with a dispirited face. I promise to help you wash your feet every day. You can't hurt Itsuka Shido. No, now I changed my mind. Suddenly turning his head to look at Kite 1 Origami, Dustless solemnly announced, bathing me is too much for you. I'm really sorry. I didn't understand that you are still an unmarried girl. I'm sorry. Dustless suddenly apologized very seriously, and looked down at Kite 1 Origami. Did this guy change his personality? Kite 1 Origami, who was caught off guard, was stunned. She looked at Dustless as if she saw a ghost. She saw that his eyes were very open and sincere, and it didn't look like he was lying. So, I don't need you to wash my feet. Dustless continued. This is not suitable for a girl like you. It's too tiring. A girl in puberty should not be overworked. I am your physical education teacher. It is my duty to take care of your health. Thank you, teacher, for taking care of me. Yue Origami bowed solemnly. Just as she was about to open her mouth to express her gratitude, Wu Chen's sudden words hit her hard. So you will be responsible for my bathing tasks in the future, such as soaking in hot springs and so on. We can have some contact. Anyway, I am your physical education teacher. If you want to train your body, for example, your chest is too small, I can help you. Compared to girls like Toka, your body must be very inferior. So in order to let you live a healthy and lively life, I have decided to sacrifice myself. Wu Chen looked at Yue Origami, who was dumbfounded, with a look of, I'm thinking for you. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2099. Tokichi Origami stared at Dustless blankly. She couldn't figure out why there was such a shameless person in the world, and he was a PE teacher. God was blind. Was this kind of scum suitable to be a teacher? Don't show such an incredible look, Origami. Do you think I'm wrong? Dustless's clear eyes were dim and full of innocent grievances. I'm doing this for your sake. Puchi. The moment this sentence came out of his mouth, Tokichi Origami was so angry that she spat out her saliva. She stared at Dustless and couldn't help but be indignant. You're taking advantage of me, and you're shamelessly saying that you're doing this for my sake? Tokichi Origami was really hit by Dustless's shamelessness. It was the first time she saw such a shameless person. Do you dare to refuse? Dustless asked with a smile. You. Tokichi Origami's pretty face suddenly became angry. Why don't I dare to refuse you? Then I'm going to castrate Itsuka Shido now. Dustless turned his head and said. His words made Tokichi Origami speechless. She had to take back the words that were about to come out of her mouth. I'm willing to obey your arrangement. Resisting the discomfort in her heart, Tokichi Origami could only agree to Dustless's overbearing treaty. Dustless was going to castrate Itsuka Shido. Tokichi Origami really didn't have the courage to gamble with Dustless. Even if she knew that he might just be joking, Tokichi Origami couldn't risk Itsuka Shido's life. Ding ding ding. The bell of the last class finally spread out under the expectation of countless people. After school, the students rushed to go home. Ling-in, you go back temporarily. I have something to do at noon today. In the sports room, Dustless said to Murasame Ling-in. He had to go to the base of AST to help the 4 departments get back the 4 kainai. He had no time to go home with Murasame Ling-in at noon. I understand. Murasame Rain nodded. If it was Yedao Juxiang and others, she might be worried, but in terms of the strength of Dustless, it was the other party who should be worried. Dong dong. At this moment, a dull knock on the door suddenly sounded, and the closed door was suddenly pushed open. That's strange. Shouldn't the students be going home now? Dustless frowned and shifted his gaze over. A rather unexpected figure came into view. Origami Kite. Dustless frowned as he looked at the young girl in surprise. Are you planning to humiliate yourself again? Little girl, you should give up. I really don't mean to hurt you, but with your current level, if you want to, take it. Who would have thought that Origami Kitsune would throw a doll to Dustless, and then leave without saying a word? This is. Looking at the doll in his hand, Dustless was quite surprised and said to himself, isn't this the doll of the 4 series, the Sinai? She actually took the initiative to hand over the thing. This kind of thing has never happened before. Is there any conspiracy? Rain, who was more cautious, asked with full of vigilance. Was it possible to spit out what you ate? AST was not a good person. They also counted on this doll to ambush the 4 series. How could they easily hand it over? Maybe it was like this before. Dustless was not much surprised and said very seriously. But they realized the gap between me and them, so they admitted defeat and gave up their previous plan. Compared with me, all the strong are weak. Dustless finally added. These words sounded arrogant and boundless, but Rain was silent. Who let this be the truth? Let's go back. Originally, he wanted to go to AST's base to make trouble, but he didn't expect that group of girls would be so smart at the moment. They even took the initiative to send the doll of the 4 series. It seemed that they were afraid of Dustless. Inside Itsuka Shido's house. Knock knock knock. There was a burst of knocking on the door. Itsuka Kotori came in wearing slippers in a very bad mood, and she didn't forget to complain. Those 2 guys really know how to enjoy themselves. There are only 2 elves and me at home. What if they go berserk? Although the probability was 0, at this moment, Toka was wolfing down the food, and as for the 4 series, they were sitting on the sofa watching TV very obediently. They looked quite harmonious. You 2 guys came back so late, did you go on a date? After opening the door, seeing Rain and Dustless together, Itsuka Kotori said in a bad mood. It's very dangerous to leave me alone at home to watch the 2 elves. Dangerous? Dustless ignored Itsuka Kotori's complaints and walked in lazily. The dangerous one is you, Itsuka-san. I'm afraid that you and Toka will steal her children's meal. Bastard. Hearing this, Itsuka Kotori was furious and looked at Dustless indignantly. That was originally mine, and you gave it to Toka without my permission in order to please her. You can't say that. Dustless walked behind Toka and gently rubbed her hair. He slowly raised his head and looked at Itsuka Kotori's beautiful eyes and said with a smile, isn't saving the elves your duty as a commander? What's the big deal about losing a children's meal? Dustless's words made Itsuka Kotori speechless. Indeed, as Dustless said, her duty was to save the elves, and a children's meal was nothing. Even if Toka was already past the age of eating children's meals. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus more chapters, 3,000 rewards plus more chapters, 1,000 comments plus more chapters, 500 automatic subscriptions plus more chapters. Chapter 2100. Dustless completely ignored the girl's anger. He didn't even look at Itsuka Kotori. She had 2 modes. One was the terrifying commander mode, and the other was the sister mode. Itsuka Kotori's 2 modes were completely different. Itsuka Kotori was acting like Itsundra, and it didn't make sense. You're a good girl. That's rare, but it's good that you're like this. Dustless patted the girl's head with a warm smile. Okay. When Nightblade God 10 Fragrance heard this, she immediately rubbed her forehead against Wu Chen's palm. A bright smile appeared on her small face. Wu Chen subconsciously pinched her cheek. It was extremely harmonious. Despicable fellow, he actually used my things to curry favor with 10 fragrances. Simply despicable. Itsuka Kotori stomped her feet in anger. She realized that Dustless had used her deluxe children's meal to win Toka's favor, and it had reached a terrifying 90%. Perhaps he was just one step away from completely subduing Nightblade God 10 Fragrances, and even sharing a bed with her would not be a problem. Immature brat. Dustless glanced at Itsuka Kotori. She was in commander mode. She was both tsundere and sharp-tongued, so it was useless to say anything. Knock knock knock. Someone knocked on the door. Itsuka Kotori frowned and glared at Dustless. Then she slowly opened the door. Her eyes were clearly saying, "Just wait and see." Creak. After opening the door, Itsuka Kotori's pupils constricted at the sight of the person in front of her. Shido. It was Itsuka Shido, who was expelled from the Itsuka family. That kid is here? Does he have a death wish? Dustless's eyes glowed coldly. There was a 3-point agreement. Dustless could move into the Itsuka family, but he had to expel Itsuka Shido. Now that he dared to come back, it was an indirect violation of the agreement. Thinking of this, Wu Chen's eyes were filled with murderous intent, and he pounced forward like a blade. This brat is... Who exactly beat him up like this? What a pity. Why didn't you kill him? Dustless's murderous intent disappeared when he saw Itsuka Shido covered in blood and wounds. He was already half dead, so he might as well kill him. After all, he would suffer if he lived. Who did this? Itsuka Kotori's face darkened as she clenched her fists. It was the newcomer Tokisaki-san. I don't know why she attacked me. Shido was out of breath. His eyes were about to close. He was only one step away from death. Tokisaki-san? Dustless frowned. He looked at Shido and said, "That fellow can attack anyone but you. In a way, you're too important to her." Although Dustless obtained the same ability as Itoka Shido was too easy to bully. Tokisaki Kurumi would never kill him. After all, he was an important chess piece and couldn't be lost. Don't tell me you. The hatred in Itsuka Kotori's eyes disappeared as she said angrily, "You're lucky that you didn't get killed for harassing an elf. Especially that Shikisaki Kurumi you mentioned. Her codename is Nightmare, and the number of humans who died in her hands is more than 5 digits. In conclusion, Itsuka Shido was lucky to be alive." "I didn't molest her," Itsuka Shido said helplessly. "Tokisaki-san once said that she was an elf. I tried to save her today, but she hunted me down as soon as I touched her. Luckily, I was fast enough. Otherwise, I would have been dismembered." Itsuka Shido felt wronged. He only wanted to save Tokisaki-san. "Idiot. Do you really think you are fast? Can you be faster than an elf?" Dustless curled his lips in disdain. Save. That was the word Tokisaki-san hated the most. Perhaps if it wasn't for Tokisaki-san's uniqueness, he would have been killed already. She just didn't want to kill you. You are of great value to Tokisaki-san. Dustless explained. Shido was only able to escape because Tokisaki-san purposely went easy on him. Otherwise, she could have easily killed him. You are still alive. The heavens must be helping you. Dustless looked at Itsuka Kotori and said, "If you don't want this guy to die, send him to the hospital. Serves him right." Dustless shook his head and sighed. He should be satisfied that Tokisaki-san didn't take the initiative to find trouble with him. But now, this guy actually dared to provoke Tokisaki-san. Especially after Tokisaki-san was taught a lesson by Dustless, Tokisaki-san was already furious and depressed. Itsuka Shido was simply courting death by trying to strike up a conversation with Tokisaki-san. In Dustless's eyes, Itsuka Shido was simply courting death. Moreover, it was an extremely foolish way to die. "Shido, you should go to the hospital for now. I will make that guy pay for all the harm you have suffered." Itsuka Kotori's eyes were cold, and everyone could feel an ominous hatred from her. It was clear that she wasn't joking. Itsuka Kotori respected Itsuka Shido the most. Her favorability towards him had always been 100%. Now that Itsuka Shido was injured and had a hole in his abdomen, Kotori was obviously angered. Although Tokisaki-san was an elf and was powerful, Tokisaki-san was also an elf. She wasn't afraid of Tokisaki-san. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus more chapters, 3,000 rewards plus more chapters, 1,000 comments plus more chapters, 500 automatic subscriptions plus more chapters. Chapter 2101. That's bad. Compared with Wu Chun, who was gloating, Murasame Rain was particularly anxious. Her small hands subconsciously clenched tightly, and her eyes staring at Itsuka Kotori were full of caution. I hope there will be no big problem. Murasame Rain prayed secretly. She sincerely hoped that there would be no violent scene. Shido's significance to Kotori was extraordinary, and it was not as simple as a simple brother. Kotori's favorability to Shido had always been 100%. Now that Shido was attacked and almost lost his life, Kotori would inevitably be furious and turn into an elf. However, as the saying goes, good things don't come true, but bad things come true. Sometimes, the more one hoped not to happen, the faster it came. Boom boom boom. On Kotori's skin, there was a burst of energy fluctuation visible to the naked eye, showing a fiery red color, like a blazing flame, terrifying and scorching. Damned incubus, I won't let you go so easily. Itsuka Kotori clenched her fists and swore. This terrifying flame rippled, with Kotori's anger, and even the range gradually increased, and it was about to burn Murasame Rain. Oh no! Seeing the heat wave rushing toward her, Murasame Rain turned around and ran, but it was too late. She had been secretly contacting Ratatosker to ask about the data of Kotori's emotions, but at this time, Kotori suddenly exploded. Am I going to die? Turning her head and looking at the energy flame, Murasame Rain smiled bitterly. The sofa touched by the flame was burned into nothingness in an instant. She was afraid that she was not much better. Even if she didn't die, her life was over. Buzz buzz buzz. However, at this time, in the darkest period of Murasame Rain's life, a fierce gravitational force suddenly came, tightly circling around Murasame Rain, so that she couldn't move, and then flew out in an instant. Wanxiang Tianyu. The majestic gravitational force covered Murasame Rain, and in front of the powerful gravitational force, she had no power to resist and fell into a warm embrace. It's you. Turning her head, she saw Dustless looking at her gratefully. Murasame Rain's eyes were full of sincere gratitude. You were too careless. Faintly glancing at Murasame Rain, Dustless said softly. Although some data is important, it is not worth mentioning compared with life, understand? Hearing this, Murasame Rain's cheeks froze, and she nodded embarrassedly. Sorry, I was careless just now. The commander's psychic wave broke out in a straight line. If it is not handled well, it will lead to a disaster. This was not that Murasame Ling Indo was worried, but every elf was so dangerous, at least for humans, they could easily take away the lives of hundreds of thousands of people. There is one more thing. His sight fell on Murasame Rain's cheek. Dustless looked at her seriously. Is there anything else? Murasame Rain heard the words, and her sight was also cast over. She looked at Dustless with some curiosity. Although this guy was very indifferent, the questions he raised often hit the nail on the head. Can you move away from me now? Dustless said abruptly. At this moment, Murasame Rain was completely lying on his body, and she was quite uncomfortable. Murasame Rain's mouth twitched a few times, and then she realized that she was almost lying in Dustless's arms, and the posture was extremely ambiguous. Sorry, I have been thinking about the commander, so, in short, I am sorry. I will pay attention to this kind of thing in the future. Murasame Rain's face was red and hot, and she was extremely embarrassed to leave Dustless's body. It's okay, Dustless said indifferently, and he didn't care about anything. Well, there is something I want to discuss with your excellency. Looking at Dustless nervously, unconsciously, Murasame Rain also used a kind of honorific when talking to Dustless. This slight change was not even noticed by Murasame Rain herself. Say it. Dustless was just a simple word. This bastard always uses short words every time he speaks. Does he really think he has a golden mouth? Murasame Rain's eyes twitched a few times, and she looked at Dustless with a bit of resentment. I want to bother you with one thing. Taking a deep breath, Murasame Rain said seriously. One day in the future, if the commander goes berserk and can't suppress the power in his body, I hope you can help him. According to the analysis of the data I got from Ratatosker, your body data is exactly the same as the little boy's, and you are likely to have exactly the same data, so please, be sure to help at the critical moment. The meaning of Murasame Rain's words was very simple. If Itsuka Kotori went berserk, Dustless must go on a date with her. He must win her favor, and it was better to seal the power of Itsuka coterie. No problem. Without blinking his eyes, Dustless was unexpectedly easy to talk to. Are you? Murasame Rain looked at Dustless with her eyes stunned. Murasame Rain didn't expect Dustless to agree so quickly and easily. That Dustless Kuan. Pursing her dry lips, Murasame Ling-in was moved. When she was about to thank him, Wuchen's sudden words made her head roar. She staggered and couldn't stabilize her body. She fell to the ground with a plop. Don't worry, I promise to beat Itsuka coterie, and beat her to submission. Staring at Itsuka coterie, Dustless's eyes glowed with bright light, and finally added, what date? It's better to die, just like the Night Sword God Toka, force her to be obedient by force. Really, thanks to this little girl who went berserk, I found a rare good toy, don't let me down. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2102. Beat. After hearing Dustless's words, Murasame Rain's head was ringing, and her whole person was petrified, staring at Dustless who was beaming with joy. If someone else said that he wanted to beat coterie, Murasame Rain would definitely laugh at him for overestimating himself. But if it was Dustless, she couldn't help but worry about coterie. What if her commander was crippled by this cruel brat? You don't have to thank me. Seeing Murasame Rain's eyes staring at him, Dustless slowly said, don't worry, I have enough strength. Now let's deal with this arrogant girl first. Dustless's eyes jumped with unknown brilliance, and his whole sight was cast on coterie's head, and his eyes were also twisted in an instant. The blood-red pentagonal Mangekyo Sharingan radiated a strange light. What eyes are these? Murasame Rain's heart trembled, and her whole body was cold. Dustless's strange eyes made her feel an unprecedented depression. Don't mess around. Seeing that Wu Chun was staring at Itsuka coterie, Murasame Rain reminded him submissively, but she regretted it as soon as her voice fell. If I want to mess around, you have already been destroyed. Glancing at Murasame Rain lightly, Dustless's tone was like ice, as cold as it could be. Gulp. Murasame Rain choked, looking at Dustless's blood-red eyes. She sincerely felt that she was fragile and small, and being stared at by those unknown eyes, her secrets couldn't be hidden. Rain, report all the information of Nightmare to me. Coterie's tone was heavier, and her gorgeous eyes were dotted with visible flames. I'm afraid this won't work. A simple sentence suddenly sounded, questioning Itsuka coterie's decision. The atmosphere seemed to have frozen, and even breathing became difficult for some reason. Looking up, the person who spoke was Dustless. Murasame Rain's heart jumped to her throat. At this time, this guy still wants to fight with the commander. Isn't he looking for death? Itsuka Shido's injury indirectly touched Itsuka coterie's bottom line. This usually arrogant commander was already on the verge of exploding. It was too late to extinguish her anger, but Dustless threw a match and completely ignited the powder keg that was about to explode. If this wasn't adding fuel to the fire, then what was? What did you say? I dare you to repeat it again. Coterie suddenly turned back and looked at Dustless without blinking. A dangerous light brewed in her eyes. My business, you are not qualified to interfere. Shut your mouth. When a person loses control of their emotions, they would become irritable. No one was an exception, including Itsuka coterie. You are right, your business, I am not qualified to interfere. Dustless smiled slightly, then immediately mocked. But my mouth is on my body. This is my business. Let me ask you, are you qualified to interfere? Boom boom. Not long after these words, the hidden psychic wave in Coterie's body was like a raging flood, exploding uncontrollably. Boom boom. The dark red psychic wave was more terrifying than the materialized flames, instantly annihilating everything that came in contact with it, such as the sofa and the chair, almost evaporated in the blink of an eye. Kakaka. The spiritual waves crashed against the walls, and the entire house began to shake. The fire attribute of the spiritual waves burned the walls into a charred black color. It was a terrible sight to behold, and suffocating black smoke rose everywhere. If Dustless didn't set up a barrier to prevent outsiders from spying on the situation in Coteries' house, someone would have probably called the police. This is none of your business. Don't interfere. Even if you are an elf, I will still beat you up. Coterie gritted her teeth, and her powerful tone showed that she was really angry. Don't think too highly of yourself. I am not interested in your business. Dustless said casually. Didn't I say before? Coterie's house was expropriated, and now it is my house. You dare to set fire in my house. You are quite brave. If it wasn't for the fact that we know each other, little girl, you would have been cut into pieces by now. This guy sigh, can't he be a little gentlemanly? Commander won't die if he gives in. Seeing Dustless and Coterie going against each other, Mirasame Rain didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Dustless's reaction was obviously that he wanted Coterie to challenge him, and he even deliberately angered Coterie. You force me to do this. Hearing this, Coterie was furious, and her whole body suddenly emitted a bright luster, and the whole person seemed to be in a huge light cocoon, and turned into a huge light cluster, emitting a holy light. Oh no, that's Commander's spiritual equipment. Mirasame Rain's eyes widened, and she looked at Dustless with some complaints. I want you to use the most peaceful way to calm the Commander's fire, but your behavior is playing with your life. It's peaceful enough, she is still breathing. Dustless said indifferently. If you know my past, you should feel relieved now. You. Mirasame Rain almost vomited blood because of Dustless's words. Dustless's words were full of contempt for the elves, and he didn't even care about them at all, as if he had slaughtered a large number of elves in the past. Boom. A powerful impact burst out, and the energy cocoon on Coterie's body also disappeared. At this moment, the girl's posture was completely different from before, and a pair of cold eyes stared at Dustless. Itsuka Coterie was wearing a light pink dress. When the wind blew, the edges of her dress fluttered, revealing a pair of perfect white legs. It was as if the heavens had used all their strength to carve them. There was not a single flaw to be found. Due to the girl's explosive power, it was like a storm. The long dress was blown up high. Wu Chen's sharp eyes could even see fat too. The girl's breasts were half exposed, and there was a piece of silk tied around her waist. She was holding a dangerous weapon, and her eyes were full of murderous intent. Clap, clap, clap. Under such a solemn environment, Dustless actually clapped his hands. Moreover, he even gave a thumbs up vigorously, praising him greatly. There are horns on her head? Staring at the transparent horns on both sides of Coterie's forehead, Dustless's words made Coterie furious, and even Mirasame Rain was afraid to stay away from Dustless. Little girl, are you the reincarnation of the Bull Demon King? Chapter 2103. Boom. Boom. Waves of heat spread out from Itsuka Coterie's body. The scorching light was like a storm, and the heat wave swept through the entire barrier space. Due to the high temperature, the sky within the barrier had turned into a fiery red color, and a terrifying amount of heat filled the air. The little girl is so young, but her outburst is quite terrifying. Her strength is barely not bad. Wu Chen nodded secretly. The power of this elf really could not be underestimated. Back off now, and I can pretend that nothing happened. Itsuka Coterie was quite arrogant. She looked around the barrier and frowned. Wait for me to get angry, and the consequences won't be something you can bear. Dustless didn't say anything, but his face was very strange. Being threatened by a beautiful girl, this feeling was very strange. Idiot, don't anger the commander. Mirasame Rain quickly got close to Dustless and said nervously, if you continue to be arrogant, you will only make the commander angry. At that time, the battle between the two elves may destroy this city. The life and death of others has nothing to do with me. Dustless looked at Mirasame Rain and said coldly, if she doesn't get angry, how can I continue to play? Brat, if you can make me retreat, no. If you can make me retreat one step, then you win. Not only will I let you go, but I will also help you catch Tokisaki Kurumi. How about it? Pay for your stupidity. Itsuka Coterie couldn't take it anymore and charged forward, thrusting out her divine weapon. Itsuka Kotori originally wanted Wu-chan to make a detour, so that she wouldn't get in the way of Tokisaki Kurumi. However, who would have thought that this brat would be so arrogant? It was obvious that he was trying to provoke her. Whoosh! The sharp sound of breaking through the air came head-on. Even if the rushing edge hadn't approached Dustless yet, his skin was inevitably stung. Such a violent little girl, and an elf, it will be hard for her to get married. Dustless faintly smiled inside. None of your business. Hearing that, Itsuka Kotori's mouth twitched a few times, and she increased the amount of spiritual waves in her body, and the chilling light on her axe became even more obvious. Buzz buzz buzz. Dustless did not show any weakness. His right hand trembled slightly, and like a black hole, it engulfed a large number of photons in the vacuum. Then, a shining divine sword was instantly compressed and formed. What a unique weapon! Staring at the photon sword in Dustless's hand, Murasame Rain's eyes lit up. She quickly picked up a notebook and hurriedly wrote something. It seemed that she was recording Dustless's data. What's the use of that? I can shatter it with a light stab. Itsuka Kotori chuckled in disdain and unleashed her full power. Clang, clang, clang. Sparks flew everywhere as the two weapons clashed. The immense force caused Itsuka Kotori's face to pale, and she was forced back a few steps as her arms trembled uncontrollably. Why is the force so strong? She stared at Dustless with her eyes wide open. Itsuka Kotori's mind went blank. This was the first time in her life that she made a mistake. Her hands were numb from the shock, and the blue veins on her wrists were clearly visible. That's it, Dustless said in a contemptuous tone. Weak little girl, it's hard for me to get serious. Humph. Hearing that, Itsuka Kotori snorted coldly, and her body trembled slightly, and then a dazzling light appeared. Buzz buzz buzz. The fiery heat wave exploded again. Different from before, this time all the spiritual waves rushed into the axe. The surface of the axe suddenly lit up, and the fiery red light was filled with a dangerous halo of destruction. Itsuka Kotori's spiritual waves poured into the axe, and the two sides of the axe became more and more dazzling. There were even flames coming out of the axe. Dustless looked at Itsuka Kotori quietly. She was like a fire fairy, and she could control the fire element at will. Boom boom boom. The axe had reached a state of energy saturation, and a huge beam of light shot out and rushed toward Dustless. The huge sound made people's eardrums hurt. Dustless looked up and aimed at the beam of light with his right hand, and a golden energy ball appeared at the tip of his thumb. Buzz buzz buzz. He increased the spiritual pressure in his body, and the energy ball gradually became bigger until it was the size of a fist. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. As if thinking of something, Dustless frowned and turned the energy in his body. The energy ball shrunk again, and most of the energy was recovered. Finally, Dustless's gaze froze, and he casually looked at the incoming beam of light. He flicked his finger and rushed over. Boom boom boom. The two opposing forces collided, and the void exploded, and a terrifying shockwave spread in all directions. Ka ka ka. The transparent barrier clearly couldn't withstand this powerful force, and after being attacked by the remaining energy, it was covered in cracks. Bang. The transparent barrier couldn't withstand wave after wave of energy attacks, and it shattered like a mirror. Fortunately, the barrier withstood 95% of the energy attacks, and when the barrier shattered, the shocking energy waves disappeared with the wind. The only thing worth mentioning was that Itsuka Kotori's house was razed to the ground. Seriously, even though the power of Void Flash was weakened, it still caused a huge commotion in the end. Dustless shook his head, indicating that he had already weakened the power of Void Flash, but it still caused a huge commotion. You bastard, I won't let you go so easily, never. On the other side, Itsuka Kotori's angry voice sounded. She bared her teeth and looked like she wanted to bite Dustless to death. Huh? Dustless looked over and saw Itsuka Kotori's sorry state, and he couldn't help but laugh. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 gifts plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2104. Looking at her, Itsuka Kotori, who was arrogant a moment ago, was now embarrassed. There was a layer of dirt on her face was black, and even her clothes were burnt. Her skin was exposed to the air, and when the wind blew, some parts of her body were exposed. Ouch! Itsuka Kotori screamed, her face flushed red. She glared at Dustless and scolded. Bastard, I won't let you off so easily. You better cut your stomach to atone for your sins. Cut my belly? Sorry, I'm a person who is very afraid of pain, and due to some special reasons, I have an immortal body. Dustless shrugged and said perfunctorily. Wait for me, I'll cut you into pieces. Itsuka Kotori said fiercely. Then continue. Dustless hooked his finger and provoked. Is this all you're an angel? You're no different from a vulnerable human. You. Itsuka Kotori gritted her teeth in anger, but she couldn't say anything. Recalling the previous battle experience, she was really vulnerable to Dustless. Commander, put on your clothes first. Murasame Rain rolled her eyes at Wuchin and quickly handed her coat to Itsuka Kotori. Only then could the girl's exposed body be covered. Do you have any gentlemanly demeanor? How dare you hit such a beautiful girl like me? Itsuka Kotori put on her clothes while cursing Dustless. People like you should go to hell. That's good. Murasame Rain looked at Itsuka Kotori calmly. Dustless suddenly scolded Itsuka Kotori. She was like a deflated balloon, and her anger disappeared. Fix the house, I want to sleep. Hearing that, Dustless just glanced at the two as if nothing happened, and then leisurely turned around and left. I'm going to buy a cup of Coke. Under the sunlight, Dustless's figure gradually elongated, and soon disappeared from their sight. This guy is too despicable. Itsuka Kotori was so angry that she stomped her feet. Looking at the ruins of Itsuka Kotori's house, she wanted to cry but had no tears. She cursed, Dustless, this be *starred, raised my house to the ground and asked me to rebuild it. How can he be in the mood to drink Coke? He doesn't even have the slightest remorse. Repent? Murasame Ling-in listened to the cold sweat and couldn't help but complain. Didn't you hear what he said? He tried his best to suppress his strength just now. In front of the vending machine on the other side, Dustless had just inserted a coin when a can of Coke fell out. That violent girl seems pretty strong. After opening the can of cola, Dustless casually found a place to sit down and muttered to himself. The elf's abilities are not bad. That starter elf should be more fun. It's really fun. At this moment, a seductive voice sounded. The tone was very seductive and moving. It was like taking drugs, and people couldn't help but look over. It's you. Dustless glanced at the girl who slowly walked over and said lightly. Are you here to challenge me? Did you forget the lesson from last time so quickly? The uninvited girl was Tokisaki Kurumi. Hey, you can't say that. I think we can walk together. Tokisaki Kurumi sat beside Dustless and chuckled. At least for now, it seems like we have the same goal. I'm not interested in children's fights. Dustless didn't even look at Tokisaki Kurumi as he casually said. You elves are just an existence to relieve boredom in my eyes. As for the goal, it's just your wishful thinking. He didn't want elves, so what goal did he have? Cold and arrogant as always. Tokisaki Kurumi wasn't angry. Instead, she moved closer to Dustless's ear and whispered a long string of words. We can work together to find the starter elf. Then you or I can kill her. Tokisaki Kurumi's eyes flickered with a dangerous light. Her tone was sinister and didn't seem like she was speaking casually. You want to use me? Dustless frowned at Tokisaki Kurumi as he coldly said. Help you kill the starter elf, and your dream will be fulfilled. The other elves will also disappear. Tokisaki Kurumi's expression froze. She looked at Dustless in surprise and said strangely, Don't all humans want elves to disappear? Don't compare me to those mortals. Dustless continued to leisurely drink his cola and said, They're just elves. I've seen all kinds of monsters. Do you think elves are special? In my eyes, they're just ordinary people with superpowers. If the elves were monsters and heretics, then Dustless could be called the Great Demon King. After all, he was the Ten Tails. The elves were nothing compared to him. You. Tokisaki Kurumi stared at Dustless in astonishment. She didn't know why, but she felt a warm current in her heart. She carefully looked at Dustless's handsome and serious face. His magnanimous tone didn't seem like he was lying, nor was there a need to. "You're not that annoying." Tokisaki Kurumi looked at Dustless seriously for the first time. For the first time, she felt that the man in front of her wasn't that annoying. Elves had always been the enemy of the world. This was the first time she was recognized by an outsider. It was a strange feeling, but she didn't hate it. However, Dustless's next sentence made Tokisaki Kurumi fly into a rage. "But you're annoying. You're like a shadow that won't go away. You're not allowed to follow me anymore." P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 reviews plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. You're tuning in to the Echoes of the Heart YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.